Welcome to Wife Cheating Story. I hope you have an enjoyable and relaxing time listening. Let's get started.
25 years of trust, obliterated in an instant. Her smile, once my sanctuary, now hides 1,000 lies. A stranger's cologne on her skin was my first clue. David Shiner, married, 3 kids, and still, he shared my wife's bed. 4 times, she said. Did she count them as victories? But betrayal isn't a one-sided game. I confronted her. I confronted him. And then I decided, this wasn't just pain, this was war. They thought they could destroy my world quietly. They didn't know I'd shatter theirs with a vengeance so cold it burns. Some people might say that Greg Perry was a bit distant, but that wasn't true. He cared deeply about many things. He just never showed anger easily. When he raised his voice, it was to make a point. Greg was kind, fair, and had a lot of love to give. His greatest love was for his wife of 25 years, Susan. He also cherished their 2 children, Melissa and Jude, who were now grown. Melissa had finished school and was building her own career, while Jude was about to start his final year at university. Greg was very proud of both of them and looked forward to Jude graduating. He and Susan hoped to enjoy their time alone at home once the kids moved on. On the last Monday of August, Greg sat at his desk wondering what else he could do to convince the board of directors to let him retire early, or at least work part-time. It had been over 6 months since he told Susan he would start planning to reduce his workload. She had lost her job last year, and they decided it wouldn't make sense for her to look for a new one if Greg was planning to retire soon. He promised he would be done by next year when Jude graduated, but he could tell Susan was becoming restless at home. The house felt lonely without the kids, and she missed their company. She was keeping busy with charity work at her church, but she had turned down Greg's offer to take golf lessons together, which would have allowed them to spend more time outside. Greg smiled at the thought. Their church activities and his golf were the only things that ever kept them apart when they were both working. Greg returned to thinking about how to get the board to agree to a part-time role. The problem was that they were worried about letting him step back. Greg had started Perry Consultants over 15 years ago. His calm approach, ability to see opportunities and challenges, and positive attitude had helped him navigate tough times. He could remember when the business faced serious difficulties, but now they were in a better place, and the company was growing. He relied on his trusted second-in-command, Tom Gould, who everyone expected to take over when Greg retired. Still, the board didn't want him to lighten his load at all. They worried about how things would run without him, and whenever Greg brought up retiring or reducing his hours, they always found reasons to delay. We need you to manage the current projects, or let's talk about this after the year ends. There was always a reason to wait. Greg knew that as the majority owner, he could shape his future. However, he wanted the other shareholders and his co-workers to be happy with his plans for stepping back from the company. He aimed to get the board's approval and support, hoping to leave the company and his team, who he had worked with for over 15 years, with their good wishes. In truth, Greg didn't want to quit working entirely. At 50 years old, he still had a lot of energy for the business he had built. Still, he wanted to make Susan happy and spend more time with her. Recently, it felt like he was working more hours, not less. He needed to find a way for his co-workers to accept his part-time retirement, while also convincing Susan of this decision. One board member who might support his idea was Phil Tremett, an outside director and a successful local businessman. Phil was in favor of promoting Tom and might welcome Greg stepping back. Last month, Greg had a quiet talk with Phil, suggesting that the current atmosphere among the directors might delay his retirement for a few more years. Greg hoped that Phil would convince a few directors to agree with him, but he hadn't seen any signs of that yet. As Greg was deep in thought, he heard a knock at his open office door. Paul Benson, the finance director, was carefully rolling his wheelchair toward Greg's desk, waiting for a nod to speak. Paul had joined the company about 9 years ago, wanting to return to work after an accident had limited his movement. He was a qualified accountant but had trouble finding a job elsewhere. Greg believed a person's mobility didn't determine their ability to do accounting work, so he had offered him a position with fair pay for his work. "Yes, Paul? How can I help you?" I thought you'd like to see this list of charity donations we're planning for this financial year before tomorrow's meeting. Paul handed Greg a sheet of paper. Thanks. Is there anything here that might raise questions? I don't think so. 80% of them were on last year's list. The new organizations are marked in bold. And you kept the same percentage of the gross profit like always? Yes. It's mainly your funds, so if you're okay with it, I won't argue. Greg looked at the list. All the charitable donations made through the company were directed toward local small charities, such as Friends of the Hospital and a local mother and baby group. Then Greg noticed one he didn't recognize. What's Help at 43 Manvers Street? It's an advice center for those who need support. It helps them find a place to sleep at night, knows which hostels can take them, assists with Social Security payments, and similar things. How about helping them with their problems? That could be more useful. Oh no, that's not the idea. They aren't criticized. No one judges their way of life. It's for people who aren't ready to make a change yet. It's to help them stay safe until they're prepared to make a big change in their lives. Greg looked at Paul. No way. What's wrong with them? I'm not putting my money, and as you pointed out, I am the main owner, so it's mostly my investment in people who are having a hard time and may be affecting those around them. But they need help until they can figure things out. Greg sighed. Look, Paul, I shouldn't have to explain this. I'm not against helping those who want to do better. I respect people who have faced tough times, even if they caused them, and are trying to overcome their struggles. We have at least 2 people recovering from drug use, 1 recovering from alcohol issues, and 1 with a difficult past, among others. They are putting their lives back together, and we will help them as much as we can. Greg looked at Phil and answered his silent question. And no, you don't need to know who they are. They are doing well, and I wish them the best. But there's a big difference between supporting those who want to change and those who want someone else to solve their problems. So let's forget about that idea and use the funds elsewhere, okay? Would it help if I said that my wife is a volunteer there? No, I admire Jean for wanting to help, but she should support those facing challenges they didn't cause and who respond well to the help they get. That's just my view. Sorry, but she won't get any of my funding. Okay, I will adjust it before the board meeting tomorrow. The monthly board meeting the next day went smoothly. No one mentioned Greg's retirement, and the donations were approved without a hitch. Greg felt happy with everything until they reached the Any Other Business section. Then Paul spoke up and said he should inform the board that C&G Services hadn't paid their invoices for 9 weeks. Paul wasn't worried about C&G's reliability, but there could be a cash flow issue for Perry Consultants. There were murmurs around the table about C&G being their biggest client, using more than 20% of the company's consulting team. They talked about any rumors regarding C&G, and Phil Tremott mentioned he had played golf with Leslie Goodman, their managing director, on Sunday. Phil suggested they might be having early talks about taking over the company. Greg had been listening and felt frustrated with Paul for not telling him sooner about a possible problem. However, Tom Gould, sensing Greg's irritation, leaned in to explain that Paul had been keeping him updated and they were watching the situation closely. Greg decided it was time to respond firmly. Paul, what percentage of our sales comes from C&G? Paul checked his notes. 21.4%. And how much do they add to our overall profit? 12.7. So they're not as profitable as our smaller clients. What are we doing to make our position clear to them? Tom spoke up. We've sent a strong final warning letter. We could pull our team away at any time, although we wouldn't do that. Maybe I should talk to Leslie Goodman to push for payment. Greg said, no, we need to be firm. Remind them they are behind on payments. If we don't receive payment by tomorrow evening, then on Thursday, tell our team not to report to C&G on Monday morning. If we let them know on Thursday, they will have a chance to reply on Friday. His fellow directors looked worried about Greg's willingness to let go of their biggest client, and he could sense their unease. Greg addressed each co-director. I'm ready to give good terms to such an important client. We will help them as much as we can. However, they have broken the contract. If we do not meet our obligations, there will be serious results for us. They need to pay quickly, or we will need to rethink our agreement after this. Looking around the table, nobody seemed ready to challenge him. So he turned to Tom. Tom, please prepare a plan for next week if C&G does not pay. If it comes to that, we may have to think about cutting back, starting with freelancers. Our first duty is to our salaried employees. Freelancers should understand the risks involved in their position. Let's hope it doesn't come to that. Yes, Greg, but this situation is concerning to me. I think we should handle it in a less aggressive way. We are not the ones breaching the contract with C&G. They are behind on their payments. We can't control that. Also, if they want to come back later, we could adjust our rates. Or we can use our top people with some of our smaller, more profitable clients. Greg looked around his board again. If there is no other business, let's end this meeting. Thank you, gentlemen. As the meeting ended, Paul jokingly told Greg that it was the first meeting in months when they hadn't mentioned his retirement. Greg noticed Phil Tremett standing close by as he replied loud enough for Phil to hear, "It seems I have to accept that you all won't let me go." I've stopped trying to suggest anything else. Greg hoped this would make Phil start to question him and help him prepare for retirement. The next Monday, Greg was at his desk when Leslie Goodman rushed in. "What's going on, Greg? I thought we were friends." "We were, and I hope we still are, but I can't have people working for you if you don't pay them. It's as simple as that. I told you about this more than once." "Yes, I know, but I didn't think you would actually go through with it. I thought I was too important for you to just drop everything over a few late payments. Here's your money. It's guaranteed, so it won't bounce. Let's get back to where we were." Greg took the check and handed it to his secretary. "Please take this to Paul for the bank." He returned to his desk and smiled at Leslie. "Would you like a coffee?" "Yes, please." "Okay, as soon as my secretary is back. By the way, Leslie, why did you stop paying?" "Ah, well, we were going through a special audit and needed to manage our cash flow better. We misplaced some invoices for a little while." "That sounds concerning, but that's your issue, not mine. I heard there was talk of a takeover." "Not anymore if they come today. We're really stuck without your team. I told you during dinner when we signed last year's contract that you were depending on us too much. We're supposed to be consultants, not your only staff. Well, after this morning, I see I need to rethink that. Anyway, I won't wait for that coffee. If you could send your team back after lunch, let's move past this. Okay, Greg?" "I'm sorry, Leslie, but they won't be coming back after lunch. But I've paid what I owe, so everything should be fine. You broke the contract. We don't have an agreement anymore. I checked, and your failure to pay means it's void. We could talk about a new contract, but I will need to increase the price. I don't see any reason to keep you as my least profitable client when you aren't paying. But on the bright side, it gives you a chance to lessen your reliance on us if you want. I could talk to my lawyer and spend a lot of money, but he'll tell you the same thing as I just did. The old contract ended when you didn't pay. You broke it, not me. So what do you want to do now?" Leslie looked at him, hesitating. Finally, he admitted, "You've put me in a tough spot, Greg. I guess I will have that coffee." The board had not been happy with what Greg did with C&G, but they had to admit he had made it work again. Everyone on the C&G contract was back to work after lunch that Monday, as a sign of good faith from Greg. The new contract was more profitable and better for both companies. So, on the last Tuesday in September, Greg looked forward to the board meeting. He glanced at his watch. It was almost 2:30, and he was the only one there. Then, all the other directors arrived together. This made Greg wonder. He didn't know about any problem or discussion he was left out of, and Tom Gould hadn't warned him about any issues. But he felt something was off. He waited while they took their seats around the table. Once they were settled, he leaned forward to start the meeting. But then Phil Tremett caught his eye. "Excuse me, Greg. Before we start with the agenda, can we talk about something else?" Greg leaned back again. "Of course, Phil. What's the problem?" "First, I think we should congratulate you on your negotiation with C&G last month. I saw Leslie Goodman last week, and even though he is still recovering, he has good things to say about C&G's future and many praises for you. But there is another matter. Some of us have been discussing your future plans and whether you have thought about retirement." Greg thought, so they finally want to talk about my retirement. Thank goodness for that. But they should be careful. I'm still the main shareholder, and after last month, I'm in a strong position. Well, Phil, everyone, He looked around the table, noticing some of his colleagues looked uneasy, staring at their notes. "I believe I have plenty of time to think about retirement. I just turned 50 recently, and I still have a son in college." Phil Tremett looked directly at him while the others examined their papers closely. "Well, there have been times when you've mentioned wanting to take things easier, and we thought it might be helpful if you could share your thoughts on that, including ideas for your potential successor. Well, I think you all know that I expect Tom to take over when I do step back. And yes, I had intended to come to this board at some point to talk about a plan that allows me to slow down a bit, but not until Jude is settled. I had come to terms that you might not let that happen." Phil Tremett seemed to represent the group's feelings. "Well, none of us are trying to push you out, Greg. We all appreciate how you've built this company." There was a general murmur of agreement from everyone around the table. "But we are starting to think that the company is entering a new stage, and perhaps now is a good time to hand over some responsibilities to Tom. Maybe you could consider that? No rush, but now could be a good time to talk." Greg looked around the room, thinking. He realized that the recent situation with C and G had bothered some of the people present more than he expected. He always felt that problems could lead to new chances, like the issue with C and G, which he saw as a way to grow. This was a chance to impress Susan, and he wanted to make the most of it. If the board agreed to a good deal, there could be vacations and fun times instead of just work. The approval of the other directors would calm the outside shareholders and auditors. "Well, gentlemen, maybe you're right. I thought I wouldn't bring this up again after your hesitation last time, not until next summer at the earliest. But if you think it's time for Tom to take on more responsibility, let me share a proposal." Greg paused, looking out of the window, gathering his thoughts. They probably felt relieved he hadn't fired anyone. They seemed grateful to have handled this difficult yet important conversation. They would likely agree to more than he should have asked. "I could hand over to Tom this afternoon. He could start as general manager today. I would still be involved, but Tom would take care of all the daily tasks. Now, if you would agree to give me more holiday time, I haven't taken my full vacation for as long as I can remember. If I could take, let's say, 20 weeks at my current salary, then I would consider stepping back a little." The directors looked at one another, and then at Phil Tremett, waiting for his response. "I think we're all a bit worried about losing you, Greg, but we agree it's the right time for Tom to move up, although we hoped you would stay around a little longer." "Oh, don't worry about that. I want to do a lot more traveling with Susan. There are so many amazing places we haven't visited and adventures to enjoy. With a satellite phone and internet in every hotel, I'll always be reachable. Just call or email me. With the right phone and a new laptop, I'll always be in touch. And apart from public holidays, I'll be around for 32 weeks each year. How about a 5-year contract?" Greg looked around the room. The directors exchanged glances, unsure of how to react. Breaking the silence, Greg said, "I'll leave you for a few minutes. Discuss it among yourselves and let me know. I'll be in my office." He stood and walked through the double doors to his workspace. Tom left through the other door, saying, "I think I should step back since I could benefit from your decision." Greg sat at his desk, smiling to himself. No one had questioned the pay part of his proposal. He thought he might need to offer a pay cut of at least 25% to get their agreement, if not for Phil bringing up the topic. Just 5 minutes later, Phil Tremett knocked on his door and asked Greg to come back to the meeting. "Greg, I'm glad to tell you that we are ready to fully accept your generous offer. I also want to thank you for handling what could have been a tricky conversation so well." Greg smiled at Tom Gould, who had just entered the room, and gave him a friendly pat on the back. "Congratulations, Tom. It's all yours." Everyone felt a sense of friendship before they got back to the original agenda. Afterward, Greg had a quick chat with Tom to sort out some handover details, planning to cover most of it the next day. Then he sat at his desk and let his imagination take flight. A balloon safari in Kenya, visiting St. Petersburg, riding a train through the Rockies, the Taj Mahal, a riverboat trip down the Nile, walking along the Great Wall of China, exploring Fisherman's Wharf in San Francisco, a cruise in the Pacific, driving across the Australian desert to Alice Springs, bungee jumping in New Zealand, whitewater rafting, hiking in Nepal to Everest Base Camp. Now that sounded exciting, a mix of adventure with some must-see spots. He was only 50 and in great shape. He felt ready for some fun, especially with Susan by his side, and now he had the time and money to do it. Life was definitely getting better. He started thinking about Susan, his partner for 27 years and wife for 25. At 48, she was still vibrant and full of life. She had put on a little weight since their wedding, but she worked hard to stay healthy. He knew she made regular visits to the hairdresser to keep her hair looking nice. He felt proud of her. She would be happy to know he was keeping his promise to take life a bit slower and spend more time with her, even if he wasn't fully retired yet. They would celebrate tonight. Greg decided he wanted to start this new chapter with a big surprise for Susan. Actually, two surprises. First, he planned to get home early, which would definitely catch her by surprise. Second, he would book a 2-week vacation somewhere warm and sunny, where they could relax and really discuss their future plans. He got home around 6 o'clock, holding a bottle of champagne and a confirmed booking for 2 weeks in the Seychelles. He called out for Susan, but she was upstairs and said she would be down soon. Greg put the champagne in the fridge, and as he stepped out of the kitchen, he saw Susan coming down the stairs. Greg greeted her with a bright smile and opened his arms for a hug. "Hi. Did you have a nice day?" he asked, deciding to wait until dinner to share his news, which he hoped would surprise her with the trip to the Seychelles. "Hi, sweetheart. Why are you home so early? I'm happy to see you," she said. "I'll tell you more later. Today was a big day at work, and I thought I would come home early," Greg replied as he walked into the living room. He settled into his usual chair and noticed the little red light on the television. It was on standby. This wasn't too unusual. Susan sometimes watched a little daytime TV, but she rarely did. He was sure he had turned everything off before going to bed last night. Well, let's see what's on. He usually didn't have the chance to watch TV at this time. The sports channel flickered to life, showing a golf tournament. That was odd. Maybe Susan had watched some tennis if it was on, but it seemed unlikely. He couldn't help but watch the screen as the tournament rolled on. "Looks like one of your friends left the golf on," he said, not really thinking. Their playful jokes about imaginary friends and his supposed infatuation with a barmaid at the golf club were part of their special connection. "Oh, I let them watch it while they waited," Susan replied. In the weeks that followed, Greg replayed that response in his mind. Did she hesitate? Was there an unusual tone in her voice? He couldn't quite pinpoint it, but after 27 years of love and shared life, he felt something was off. He stood up and looked at her. She met his gaze, a faint challenge in her eyes, trying to smile. Eventually, she broke eye contact. "How about a drink before dinner?" After all their time together, she could sense when he suspected something was wrong. He continued to watch her. She looked back, and her expression revealed everything shock mixed with guilt. There was someone else. Greg's stomach churned and his heart raced, but he managed to speak first. "I'll go and pack some bags. We can talk later." He walked out of the room and headed upstairs. As he struggled to fit 2 suits into a garment bag, she came into the bedroom. "Greg, we need to talk. Please. I'm so confused, but I know I love you. Let's discuss this." Greg looked at her, tears flowing silently down her face. "We can talk in a few days. Then we can decide what we both want to do." Greg felt the weight of unspoken feelings in his voice. "Don't go, please, Greg," she begged, stepping closer. For the first time in his life, Greg felt deep frustration, but he knew it was not in his nature or their relationship to show it. "Who is he?" he asked simply. "David Shiner. You've never met him." Her words were quiet, but to Greg they felt loud. "David Shiner? I don't think I've met him, but I might have heard you mention him." And he went back to packing. "And what?" she replied, confused. "And how long has this been going on?" Greg opened a large suitcase and placed it on the bed. "We met about 4 months ago, but we really started getting to know each other in the last month, and it has only changed in the past 2 weeks. Susan's voice was soft. 2 weeks? How many times have you seen him? Once? Twice? 3 times? Greg's tone was quiet but sharp. 4. 4. Oh. Greg continued to pack in silence. Susan stood there, tears silently sliding down her cheeks. They were both quiet, unsure what to say next. Finally, Greg zipped the suitcase, lifting it off the bed and looking at Susan. "I'll go to the River House Hotel. The season must be over, so they should have a room. If not, I'll let you know." "Oh, please, Greg, let's talk. This is silly. You can't just walk away from 25 years of marriage without talking." Susan's tears had stopped. Greg looked at her. "We'll talk in a day or two." He noticed her pale face, her red eyes. "Do you love me, Susan?" he asked. "Yes, Greg, I love you. You are my husband and my life." "Well then, when we do talk, you can explain how that love fits with what's happening now, with your beliefs and the promises you made in front of everyone. Start there, Susan. If you can't make sense of it yourself, don't try to explain it to me." Greg slung his suit carrier over his shoulder and picked up his suitcase. As he did, a white envelope slipped from his suit jacket and fell to the floor. Susan bent to pick it up. "What's this? You dropped it." Greg looked at it briefly. "It's confirmation of a trip just for us to the Seychelles starting in a week and a half. I bought it as a surprise. I accepted a part-time job so we could travel, see the world, meet new people, and try new things. Looks like you've already started some of that, Sue." "Shame." He took the envelope from her hand and walked past her towards the stairs. He stepped heavily down and out the front door, with Susan watching and softly saying, "Please, Greg, please." Greg Perry checked into the River House Hotel. The receptionist was friendly and cheerful, and Greg chatted with her while she arranged his room. "Thanks. I'll carry my bags to the room, but could you do me a big favor?" he asked. "If I can, sure. What do you need?" she replied with a smile. "Could you have a large gin and tonic ready for me at the bar in about 3 minutes? I really need one." "How about I get someone to take your bags up to the room while you grab that drink right away?" "That would be great," Greg said, and walked to the bar. After enjoying his drink and meeting George, the bartender whom Greg felt he would be seeing often, he entered the restaurant. He ordered a simple steak, medium cooked, with a side salad and a bottle of good red wine. The steak looked nice, but Greg thought it was too early to judge it, having only taken 2 bites. He only tried a piece of the tomato in the salad. The waiter watched while Greg sipped his wine and looked at the picture above the fireplace. Eventually, the waiter came over. "Are you done, sir?" Greg looked up and said, "Yes, you can take it away. Sorry to your chef." "You're not hungry, sir?" "No, I have a lot on my mind. Sorry. Would you like anything else?" "No, I think I'll take the wine and my glass outside to the terrace to think." "Is that all right?" "Yes, but it might be chilly out there. There could even be frost tonight." "Maybe the cold will help me think more clearly where the food didn't." Greg smiled softly and left with his wine. Greg sat on a bench on the terrace, illuminated by a few garden lights. He was deep in thought. Questions swirled around in his mind, some without answers and others yielding different possibilities. He poured the last of his wine into his glass. With the glass and bottle in hand, he walked to the riverbank. The river flowed quietly, lit only by distant streetlights on the bridge downstream. Frustration built up inside him, not aimed at Susan or David, but at himself for being stuck in his thoughts. He struggled to find a clear path to figure out what to do next. Then a business thought crossed his mind. Susan had broken their agreement. He remembered his commitment during their marriage. He thought she had done the same. They had upheld their promise during good times and bad, and thankfully the challenges had mostly been short-lived. He knew he had stayed true, but she had not. She had broken their promises, and their partnership was over. The divorce was just a formal way of recognizing what had already happened. Their marriage was finished. This thought brought him an odd sense of relief. To mark this change, he tossed his empty bottle into the dark water and watched it float away, a quiet sign of his old life drifting into the distance. A problem can be an opportunity. Susan and David had opened up a new freedom for him to choose his next steps. What did he want? He could try to make amends with Susan if she was willing, and they could stop the divorce. Or he could begin a new chapter on his own. The choice was his, and apart from seeking immediate happiness, anything was possible. Greg walked back to the bar, where he ordered a large whiskey and took a seat, watching George work and chatting when he could. Gradually, the evening crowd thinned out, leaving Greg and George as the final customers. Greg saw that George probably wanted to close up, so he pushed his glass toward him and said, "Pour me another one, and I will let you close up, George." "Sure thing," George replied. He poured another double scotch and handed the glass back to Greg. "I bet some woman has let you down. Am I right? Does it show that much?" "Only to trained bartenders. Want to talk about it?" Greg took a big sip of whiskey and stood up. "Not tonight, George. Maybe tomorrow." He emptied his glass and set it down on the bar. He let out a loud sigh and staggered to his room. Greg fell into an uneasy sleep but woke up early. He stood at the window, looking at the river in the morning light. He knew he had to face Susan to tell her he would start the divorce process. Only then could they think about their futures, together or apart. He also knew it would take a lot of self-control to have a calm conversation with her, instead of a harsh argument. As soon as it was polite to do so, Greg went down for breakfast. He was now hungry and enjoyed a hearty meal with plenty of tea. Once he finished, he walked down to the river again, just to have some privacy to call his secretary and let her know he would be late to the office without giving details. Greg drove back to his house, a large and nice one on the edge of town. Even though he had a key, he rang the doorbell and waited. Susan opened the door. She looked tired, her hair messy, and she was still in her robe. "Hello, Susan. I hope I didn't wake you. Maybe I'm a bit early." Susan quickly stepped forward upon seeing him. "Oh, thank goodness, Greg." But Greg stepped back. It wasn't planned. It was a natural reaction to pull away from someone he once loved but now felt far from. "I'm not here to make up, Susan. I just want to talk for a bit." Susan relaxed her arms and looked at him. "Okay, I'm sorry." She moved back into the hall. "Just a simple discussion, Susan. No fuss. What's done is done. We need to think about what to do next." "Let's go to the kitchen, Greg. Want some tea?" "Sure, tea sounds fine. Talking about our divorce over tea feels civil, right?" Greg's voice had a bitter edge. In the kitchen, Greg started to brew some tea. Susan sat at the table, knowing it was best to wait for him to speak. When the tea was ready, Greg placed it on the table with cups and milk, then sat down and stared at her, the woman who represented 27 years of his life. "Oh, Greg, I'm so sorry. You shouldn't have to feel this way. I promise we can get through this." Greg looked at her, wanting to show his hurt, but he held back. What good would it do? "I don't want to hear your excuses. I said I want a calm talk. Expressing sorrow won't help, and neither will telling you how much your actions have hurt me. You meant to damage our happy marriage of 25 years, Susan." But you know that Greg paused. He had said too much and needed to choose his words carefully. If Susan was pale before, she looked even more so now. She gasped and then began to cry, tears filling her eyes. "I'm sorry, Susan. That was too harsh. It was true, but maybe not necessary. Please wipe your eyes. We need to have this talk." Greg quietly poured the tea while he waited for her to calm down. He slid a cup toward her and took a sip from his own. Eventually, Susan dried her tears and looked at Greg. "You're right, Greg. I shouldn't be surprised that you feel this way. I should have expected it. Hearing you say it hurts a lot." "All right, Susan. I have a few questions for you." "Would it help if I explained why I felt like that?" Susan asked softly. "No, I don't need that. Just answer me a couple of questions. Did you know what you were doing when you got involved with him?" There was still bitterness in Greg's voice, and Susan noticed that he avoided saying David's name. "Yes, Greg, I knew. I didn't think you would find out. It felt necessary at the time." "And is this the first time? Or is he just the latest in a line of relationships? Should I be worried about Melissa and Jude?" Greg asked quietly, looking straight into Susan's eyes. Susan looked down. "It's upsetting to hear you think that. No, there haven't been any other relationships. For 27 years, you have been the only man in my life. I promise you that." "Well, I guess that's good to hear. But it seems to me that what's happening is unavoidable." Susan took a sharp breath. She felt something big was about to happen. "Susan, you've broken our agreement. It seems we are no longer married. I will ask a lawyer to start the divorce process right away. I don't know if this will help you, or if it will give you space in your new relationship. But I don't believe we have any ties to each other now. Our marriage was affected by your choice. You have admitted knowing what you were doing, and you've said it before. We just need to figure out how to divide our belongings and support Jude until he can stand on his own. Susan just stared at him, shocked by his words. There were no talks or questions about her reasons or how they could fix things together. I don't want a divorce, Greg. Her voice rose with worry. I love you, and I want us to stay married. I've thought about this all night. I know my mistake, and I believe we can overcome it. It won't be easy for you, but I trust you can work through it. I trust you won't abandon everything we have, our kids, our life, our friends. Greg looked back at her. Well, once the divorce starts, maybe we can meet and talk about what happened and what we both want for the future. If we both want to stay married and can work on this, we can think about stopping the divorce. Right now, it feels like this is what has to happen. You made a choice, and divorce seems to be the only way to move forward. This is our situation now. Things could change, but only after we've had some time to think. He paused for a moment before continuing. Honestly, I don't even know if you meant to move on with him, or if you just wanted a different kind of life, some space. Maybe you don't know what you want either, which is why we need time to think. No, Greg. I've never imagined my life without you. I only want us to grow old together, and I don't need time to figure out what I want in the future. They looked at each other for a long moment, each wondering what was going through the other's mind. I'm sorry, Susan, but I need that time. As you know, I have a trip planned to the Seychelles. It was supposed to be the start of our new life together. Now I'll go by myself and use it to think about my future and whether I want to include you in it. Couldn't we both go and use it as a chance to work through this together? I know it might be tough, but surely we should be together, not on opposite sides of the world. No, Susan, we can't. I'll go, and maybe I'll return with a clearer idea. In the meantime, I don't know what you plan to do about your situation. Maybe you're thinking about giving him another chance, or hoping I'll understand. But if we want to move forward, you need to call him right now and end it for good. Can you promise me you won't see him again? Oh, yes, Greg, I promise. It wasn't just his fault. We both made a mistake. I don't want to do that again with him or anyone else. I promise. I called him last night and told him I never want to see him again. Okay, let's go a bit deeper. I felt a lot of anger and confusion since last night. I can't deny that I'm hurt. I don't know if things can be the same between us again, but I know we need time apart to figure things out. He chose to spend time with a woman who says she is happily married. Is he really married? Yes. He has 3 children. Well, if his wife finds out, she might feel just as angry, but that's not my concern right now. What I want to know is, if I decide to confront this man who has hurt everything I care about, will you be there with me? Are you willing to help me deal with this, to help me move on and win me back, Susan? Susan gasped, realizing how strong Greg's feelings were. I don't know, Greg. This isn't like you. I don't like seeing you so upset. David isn't a bad person. He just made a mistake like I did. He doesn't deserve anything bad to happen to him. No, Susan, he is not just a mistake maker. He needs to face the results of what he did. But I'm not sure what I'll do about him. You're right. I have never wanted revenge before. But maybe this is the first time. They sat in silence, both lost in their thoughts. Susan broke the silence, trying one last time to fix things. Come home, Greg, even if you sleep in the guest room. What will people say if they know you moved out? We could talk. I could explain. No, Susan. First, I don't care what others think. It makes me sad that this is your first worry. And right now, I don't need an explanation. You made your choices, and you knew what you were doing. That's all I need to know now. I have to decide if I want to live with someone who has done this, or how to rebuild my life from what you've done. Susan broke down in tears, and Greg quietly got up and left. When Greg got to the office, he told his secretary that he was now staying at a hotel, and why. By the end, she was upset. Through her tears, she asked Greg what he planned to do. I will start the divorce process, Greg said. After that, I will think about what I want. Maybe it will include trying to fix things. Greg's day was filled with short meetings with Tom Gould, who often called on Greg to discuss issues as he took over the company. Between these meetings, Greg made a few phone calls. First, he called his lawyer to set up an appointment, but the lawyer was not available until the next day. Then Greg reached out to old friends and former colleagues, asking gently about David Shiner to learn more about him. After a couple of hours, Greg found out that David was happily married with 3 children, around 40 years old, and worked for TMD Electrical. After lunch, Greg called Ed Maskill, the managing director of TMD and a casual golf friend. Greg invited him for a quiet drink at the River House Hotel after work. Greg was chatting with George when Ed arrived. After they greeted each other and made some small talk, Greg shifted the conversation to what was bothering him. "I invited you here tonight because I need a favor. I'm sorry to say that Susan and I have separated. I don't know if it's for a short time or a long time, but we are having issues." "I'm sorry to hear that, Greg. Is there anything I can do to help?" "No, not directly. But could you keep an eye on Susan for me? She has been involved in an affair, and since you often attend All Saints, I think she may look for support from the church as she figures things out. I wanted to tell you myself to prevent any hurtful rumors. I'm on the parochial church council, so you've come to the right person. I hope she will be treated kindly. But the church won't support that kind of behavior if what you say is true." "It's true. A short affair with a man named David Shiner. I don't know him, but she does, and she does not deny it." "David Shiner? Wow. He works at TMD, you know. He has been with us for about 8 or 9 months in our marketing department." "He works for you?" Greg said, slightly surprised. "Yes, and he's married too. I met his wife at the summer barbecue, and they have a couple of kids. Well, there's not much I can do about it. As you know, we can't get involved in employees' private lives these days. But I don't like these situations. I have some principles, which is why I attend All Saints." Ed paused and looked at Greg, who seemed calm but listening carefully. "I might not be able to take any action, but to ease your mind, I'll make sure he doesn't get any promotions while I'm in charge." There were plans to promote him to marketing director, but that wasn't going to happen while I was around. "Sorry, Greg, but I can't support that." "Well, I'm not too happy about it either, Ed," Greg replied. "From my view, things seemed different," said Greg with a small smile. He hoped it hid his feeling of success, which had come easier than he had thought. Once Ed left, Greg actually enjoyed his steak this time. He went back to the bar and slid into his favorite bar stool. As the bar started to clear out, George had more chances to talk with Greg. Greg decided to share his troubles. While serving the few remaining customers, George listened patiently. When Greg finished his story, he asked, "How many times have you heard something like that?" "This year, 3 times. You're the 4th. And I'll tell you what I told the others. Life is what you make it." "And how does that help me?" "Well, if you want to work things out with your wife, don't doubt yourself. But if this is too much, then go create a new and happy life. It's up to you. Life is what you make of it." Words of wisdom from a bartender. "Hey, don't discount it. Just enjoy the moment. This drink is on me." And George poured Greg another whiskey. On Thursday, Greg met with his lawyer to begin divorce proceedings. The lawyer suggested that Greg consider talking to Susan first to hear her side of things. All Greg wanted was the option to stop the process if necessary, but he felt that his marriage was too broken for that. After seeing the lawyer, Greg decided it was smart to take some financial steps. He opened new bank accounts and arranged to have his salary sent to his new account instead of the joint one. He tried to close some of Susan's credit cards, but that turned out to be harder than he had thought. One unsettling thought stayed with Greg. The results of David Shiner's actions were not as satisfying as he had hoped. He felt strong anger towards that man. While he understood being upset with Susan, his feelings toward David were purely filled with rage. Finally, on Saturday morning, he couldn't resist the urge to drive to David Shiner's house. He parked near a neighbor's home and just watched. David Shiner was mowing his front lawn, moving back and forth. He looked just like Greg had imagined, a regular guy in his early 40s, maybe a bit heavier than he used to be. He had less hair than Greg expected, with a bald spot at the back. But he looked like an everyday person. How looks can be misleading, thought Greg, As he observed, a woman came out and went to the garage, backing out a family car that was this year's model, according to its license plate. Greg understood that it wasn't unexpected. Shiner had started a new job. After parking the car in the driveway, Greg's wife went into the garage. Soon after, two boys, likely early teens, came out with their bikes and rode away, saying they would be back for lunch. Greg's wife returned, kneeling with a small tool to take care of some flowers. The cheerful scene made Greg feel even more frustrated. Greg got out of his car and walked over. "David Shiner?" he called out. Shiner paused his work and turned to Greg as he got closer. "Yes, I'm David Shiner," he replied, leaving his mower and walking toward Greg. Greg's wife looked up, curious about the exchange. As Shiner approached, Greg said clearly, "I'm Greg Perry, Susan Perry's husband." Shiner's face changed, and he looked back at his wife, who was getting up. In that moment, Greg struck Shiner with a strong punch. Shiner stumbled and leaned against the car, causing the side mirror to shake. As he fell, Greg could see he was hurt, some blood appearing on his lips. Greg turned and walked back to his car. Mrs. Shiner hurried to her husband, calling for him, and then kneeling next to him to check on his injury. Sitting in the driver's seat, Greg shook a little and fought back tears. Through his tears, he watched Shiner and his wife. She seemed to be speaking to him, but Greg couldn't hear them. To his surprise, she suddenly hit Shiner out of frustration. Greg felt a real sense of truth in that moment. Gradually calming down, Greg drove back to the hotel. George was at the bar when he arrived. "A whiskey, please, George." "You look a bit shaken, sir. Is everything all right?" "Yes, I'm okay. Feeling better, actually, though my knuckles hurt a little," Greg replied with a tight smile. "And he has a matching nose, I presume, sir?" "I think it was more about his lips and mouth, but you get the idea." "Well then, that whiskey's on me, sir." After lunch, Greg lay on his bed listening to soft, classical music on the radio. He felt calmer than he had in days, realizing he was free to think about what he wanted for the future, instead of being stuck in past feelings. As the room grew dim with the setting sun and the music continued to play, Greg's phone rang. He answered the call and looked at the caller ID. "Yes, Jude. What can I do for you?" "Hi, Dad. What's happening between you and Mom? I just talked to her, and she's really upset. I had to stop talking to her as we weren't getting anywhere. She mentioned you've left her and that she's done something she regrets. I'm not sure if that was before or after you left. As I mentioned, she seemed too upset to really say what was on her mind." "Well, yes, Jude. She was right. I have left her. I was just trying to figure out how to tell you and Mel. It seems she did that for me." "So, what's going on? You can't just walk away, Dad. I can't imagine that." "Unfortunately, that's what I did when I found out your mother has been unfaithful. I think she sees it as a big mistake. I'm sorry, Jude, but this isn't my fault." "No, Dad. You must be wrong. Mom wouldn't act like that. I just can't believe it." "That's what I thought too, but we were both wrong. His name is David Shiner, and she's been seeing him for 4 months. According to her, it has been going on for about a month. She says otherwise, but for all I know, they might still be together. This could be someone special to her. I honestly don't know anymore, and I'm not sure I care." "No, Dad. Maybe she just got confused or something happened that led her to it. From what I've heard today, she seems to regret it now. You can't just give up on her." "This afternoon, I did a lot of thinking. I realize I have a decision to make. I have to accept that your mother has hurt our marriage. She broke our trust. After 27 years, I thought I knew her, and I never would have imagined she could do this. Yes, she might have felt unhappy or tempted, but to act like this goes against everything she believes. I have to accept her choices and think about how I want to live my life." "With Mom, right? You can't really picture life without her, can you? Not in the long run. Maybe not right now, but think about the future." "I have to think about it, Jude. I'm considering it. Yes, I believe we could find a way to work through this. It wouldn't be easy. It would take time and hard work, but we could come up with a solution if we both wanted it. I'm just not sure if she truly wants to fix this," I asked her, "but she hasn't had the chance to realize how tough this is. But let's say we did find a way. What would that look like? A relationship that might work most of the time, but I would always feel less important to her than this David Shiner. That feeling might always linger. It was her choice, and it won't change, no matter how much effort I, any counselor, or she puts in. 25 years of our marriage will always be affected by her actions. That's the truth, Jude. So, is that the kind of person I want to share my life with? I don't know. Oh, Dad, who is this David Shiner anyway? Well, I don't know him well, but from what I've heard, he's just an ordinary marketing manager. He is a few years younger than your mother and works for TMD in town. Your mother says he is married and has 3 children. What will happen to them? Does his wife know? I think she does now, and it seems unlikely they will get back together anytime soon. You didn't, Dad. What happened to all the lessons you taught us about treating others well? I guess I forgot to mention some exceptions to those lessons while raising you. I'm sorry. But honestly, it didn't clear anything up, yet I felt a bit better afterward. Oh, wow. I don't know what to think about that. My dad getting into a fight. If every man reacted like that when they felt wronged, there would be chaos. Yeah, that's how it can feel when you're young. When you're older and have been happily married for a while, things change. Does Mel know? Jude asked after a moment. No, I think one of us should tell her, but she is in Spain with Carl. I believe she returns at the end of the week. Your mother will have the exact date. Should I come home? I can, even if it means missing a few classes. Nobody will mind under the circumstances. Unless your mother truly needs you, I wouldn't. I would love to see you, but your mother and I have a lot to think through, and nobody can help us with that. Greg sounded weary of the emotional burden. If you're sure. Take care of yourself, Dad, and please let me know once you and Mom decide what to do. Of course. Now focus on enjoying your time. That's what you should be doing. And don't worry about the future. No matter what happens, your mother and I love you very much, both you and Mel. I know that, Dad. That makes all of this so hard to understand. Yes, I understand. Don't worry. Bye, son. Bye, Dad. Greg hung up the phone but sat staring at it for a while. Talking to Jude had helped him more than Jude could ever know. Now, he understood his main question. Did he want to stay with someone who had not valued him or their marriage? Everything else, the reasons, the anger, the hurt, were temporary. In the end, Susan would always be a wife who had broken her promises and his trust. Could he live with that? Did he want to learn to accept that? Greg settled back, knowing the answer would come to him, as it always did over time. He gave himself a few weeks to think things over before returning from the Seychelles. By the next Thursday, Greg found himself sitting on his bar stool watching George and feeling low. He didn't feel like eating but stayed there, sipping a drink and watching George and the customers come and go. As closing time approached, George said, "You seem a bit down tonight, sir." "Yes. Once I had a wonderful marriage with an amazing woman, and now, how do I find happiness again?" "What you really need, sir, at a time like this, is a change of pace." "Why?" "Do you have any ideas?" Greg asked with a small smile, clearly interested. "Of course, that's what I'm here for," came the reply. It was Saturday morning when Greg was saying goodbye to a young woman when Melissa entered the hotel. "Melissa!" Greg called out, giving her a hug. "How was your trip?" "Oh, it was wonderful, but I didn't expect to come home to this. I talked to Mom yesterday morning, and she was really upset that I came down last night. What's going on, Dad? Who was that?" "That was Chantel. I met her when I was going through a tough time. She's a single mother and a nurse trying to earn extra money. Why does this bother you?" "Oh, Dad, how could you? You're still married, and this hurts Mom." "Listen, I've made choices about your mom. I'm sorry, but the divorce is a result of her actions, not mine. Beyond fair arrangements, I don't owe her anything. I have my own life to live now. I thought it would be with your mom, but this is how it is. Maybe I'll try to make things right with her. Maybe not. Right now, I want to enjoy life." "But you can't really go through with the divorce. You can't. I go away with happily married parents, and I come back to this. Mom is so sad. She knows she made mistakes. Can't you find a way to fix this, please? Don't break up our family." "Let's go to the lounge and have some coffee, Mel. I know this is a big shock for you. It surprised me too, but this is reality. Come on, let's talk." And that's what they did. Melissa struggled to understand her mom's actions while grappling with her emotions about the changes. Greg felt regretful but firm in his decision, and she knew once her dad made up his mind, he wouldn't change it. Truthfully, she couldn't find a reason for him to do so. Then, on Tuesday, after a long day at work, Greg was approached by a man at the reception. It was David Shiner. Greg glanced at the security cameras, making sure their conversation would be recorded. David noticed Greg's hesitation. "It's all right, Mr. Perry. I just want to talk for a few minutes." Greg studied him, but before he spoke, David added, "It's okay. I don't hold any grudge about." He pointed to a mark by his mouth. "You may not, but I still feel uneasy about it," Greg replied, looking closely at Shiner. "All right, let's talk for 5 minutes at the pub across the street." They walked in silence, and Greg ordered a whiskey, while Shiner asked for a half-pint of beer. After they got their drinks, they sat down across from each other. "Well," Greg prompted. "First, I want to say I'm sorry for my part in the issues between you and Susan." David paused, searching for a response. When none came, he continued, "Susan called me this weekend. It's the first time since she said she never wanted to see me again. She called to talk about your divorce and was worried I might get involved in that and that my wife could find out." Greg replied, "That was kind of her. But why should I care? You know my wife knows about Susan. You helped with that. During our chat, I realized Susan is really struggling. My wife and I talked it over, and we've decided I should talk to you because I'm genuinely worried about Susan's well-being. I appreciate you sharing that, but we all have to deal with the choices we make. Susan has decided not to be my concern. I care for her, of course, but there's nothing I can do to help." An uncomfortable silence settled between them until Greg asked, "Has your wife forgiven you?" "I'm not sure yet. After your visit that Saturday, I spent the night in my car. On Sunday, she let me back in to talk. We can't afford a hotel, so I'm sleeping on a camp bed in the study. We're talking, sort of. I think she might agree to some counseling. Whether it will help us, I don't know. But I really want it to work. I love my wife very much." "Why did you have an affair? That's not what loving husbands do." "You're right. I shouldn't have. I guess life became too overwhelming at that time. I changed my job and moved my family here, making my wife and kids leave their friends. My wife had to give up her job, too. The kids have switched schools and aren't very happy about it. Plus, we have a big mortgage, so money is tight. I also have a new job where I need to impress, but I'm struggling with that." "What happened?" "I joined TMD as the marketing manager, believing they might soon promote someone to marketing director. Last week, the personnel director took me aside and told me they would be looking for a new marketing director, but advised me not to apply. This was off the record, of course, but he mentioned that there are aspects of my personal life that senior management found concerning. Senior management means Edward Maskill. You might know him?" Greg couldn't help but respond, "Yes, I do. We meet from time to time." David looked at him, curious. Greg kept a neutral expression. After a long pause, David continued, "I guess I used stress as an excuse. I met Susan, and we connected well. It felt like a break from everything weighing me down. To me, it wasn't really serious, and I don't think it meant much to her either. But I'm not sure why she acted the way she did. She knew their relationship had no future. It was just a short affair, nothing more. I figured it was something like that. I never believed it meant much. The real issue was the betrayal of our marriage. 25 years of faithful love from both of us just tossed aside. I have to accept that it was her choice." "Faithful love? That's not what Susan said to me. Maybe that was her way of justifying her actions. She never had any reason to doubt me. All I know is that she cared for you deeply, and now she seems very hurt. Please, Greg, if I can call you that, talk to her. Give her another chance. I was concerned when she talked to me. I will speak with her, but I doubt it will change much. And I won't do it for a couple of weeks. I am heading to the Seychelles tomorrow for a trip I planned for Susan and me. It seems a shame to waste the ticket, so I will go alone. I loved Susan with all my heart and probably still do, but divorce is the result of her choices, not mine. I've made my choice. Maybe later we can find a different way to handle this, but for now, the divorce will happen." Greg stared at David Shiner, then finished his drink and left. Greg went on vacation to the Seychelles, aware of the empty side of the large bed in his hotel room. Still, he found some joy. The sun and swimming felt nice. Each evening, he walked along the beach, lost in thought. He longed for the comfort of a loving partner. He wished with all his heart that Susan hadn't betrayed him in their wonderful marriage. But she had. For reasons he couldn't understand, she had chosen a few moments with David Shiner over their relationship. He wondered if he should find out why. If Susan could really convince him that she regretted it, that it was just a brief mistake, maybe he could find a way back. He was unsure. What he did know was that he hated being alone almost as much as he disliked what Susan had done. When he returned home, he called Susan. "Hi, it's me." "Oh, Greg, it's nice to hear from you." "Sue, I need to see you. Can we meet tomorrow evening at the house?" Susan paused. He could almost feel her considering whether to ask what this was about. But she kept calm. "Sure, Greg. I'll make something nice. Come for dinner. I'll make your favorite." "No, Sue. I'm coming to talk, not to eat. Let's say 7:30 at the house, okay?" "Yes, Greg. I'll be here." So the next evening they sat across from each other in their family living room, surrounded by the furniture and art they had collected over 25 happy years. They remained silent, just looking at one another. Greg thought, "What now? She looks different." He felt a mix of emotions, maybe a little glad, maybe sad, and maybe worried for her. Susan was growing more anxious by the moment, while Greg struggled to find the right words to start a tough conversation about a big change in their lives. He decided to begin with a reference to their last chat, since it could at least give him a place to start. "I think we have a lot to talk about, including the money matters related to our divorce." Susan gasped, staring at him in disbelief. "You can't. No. This isn't right. You promised we would talk and we haven't. You can't just walk away like this. I'm really sorry for how I hurt you. I regret everything so much, but you can't just end it, Greg. You owe me more than that." "Yes, I can, Susan. Yes, I can." Greg thought, there isn't anything she can say that changes the fact that after so many years together, she valued their marriage so little that she sought a connection with someone else not just once, but several times. "I can't stay married to someone who treats so many years of loyalty this way. I'm sorry." Susan's eyes were now glaring at him. "I've done my part too. It wasn't all one-sided. I've dealt with a lot and had my struggles. Yes, I connected with someone else a few times, but that was just a brief mistake in all these years together. You aren't being fair, Greg. You haven't even let me explain." "You're right. I should give you a chance to share your side. In fact, I want to hear your reasons for why I should reconsider the divorce, reasons that can give me hope for a good future with you." Susan seemed relieved that he wanted to listen. "I knew you would be fair. You've always been the kind one." "Kind?" That word made Greg a bit upset. "If you're suggesting that I've been unfaithful, then you're mistaken. I've never been with anyone else. If you mean I spent too much time working and away from home, then yes, I did that. But I always wanted to be here with you and the kids. I thought I was working for a future we both wanted. We've always talked about it, and I thought we were on the same page. I remember we agreed I wouldn't be away for more than 2 weeks at a time, and I kept that promise. I thought that understanding made our marriage special." Susan looked at him, wide-eyed and a bit taken aback. "No, Greg. I'm sorry if you think I was upset about the business and your job. I know how hard you worked for all of us. I would never blame you for that. Never." A long silence stretched between them until Susan broke it, asking, "Should I tell you I did it? Does it matter to you?" "I'm not sure. I feel like you crossed a line. You chose to break our trust. There was no reason that made it okay, and I'm just responding to what you did, Susan. I'm still not sure if I want to hear if you thought you had a reason because there wasn't one. But I did say, and if it helps you." "So what about the times you crossed that line, Greg? What about those times?" Greg stared at her, surprised. "I just told you I never crossed that line. Not once did I even get close to it. What made you think I ever did? And if you had doubts, why didn't you talk to me about it?" "I did, but you just made excuses that didn't deal with my concerns." "When?" Greg asked, raising his voice a little. Susan looked at him, then paused before answering. "Do you remember that summer gathering at Tom and Julie's when the kids were very young?" "Tom and Julie Braithwaite? We'd been married about 5 years, just under 5 years. I remember it well. Why? You disappeared for quite a while. When I asked you, you said you were talking to someone in the house, but I knew you weren't. I looked for you. Everyone was saying that the Braithwaite's nanny had been seen leaving with a man, and we had a similar car to theirs back then. About a week later, Jill Woodhouse said you were bragging at the golf club about your conversation there. Her husband John told her. That was the first time I started to question your behavior. Susan seemed pleased with her memory. Greg thought carefully before he spoke. Well, I didn't lie to you. Do you remember what Tom Braithwaite did for work? Yes, he was a car salesman. Exactly. We spent a good while in their bedroom while I finished the paperwork on that little red Mini I gave you as a wedding anniversary present the next month. We could hardly afford it, and it took time to handle financing. So yes, I was talking to someone in the house, and you drove that Mini for years. It's the first car that both Jude and Mel remember. It's a part of our family's history. Susan remained unconvinced, firmly holding on to her beliefs. So why did Jill Woodhouse say you were bragging about it at the golf club? I have no idea, but knowing John Woodhouse's way of stretching the truth, I would guess he needed something to keep people talking. They had a blue Ford at that time, if I remember right. Oh, God. That was all Susan could say. But if that troubled you all these years, why didn't you say anything? I suppose I fell into the role of the strong wife, keeping the family together for the children's sake, even with what I thought was betrayal. And you did stray, didn't you, Greg? Maybe not that time at the gathering, but when you traveled for work, you can't tell me you never faced temptation. But I didn't, Susan. Not once. For 27 years, I loved you. I thought of you many times every day, at home, at work, and especially when I traveled. I promise you, I was completely faithful. I've already told you that. And what about the time I couldn't reach you at your hotel in New York? You confidently told me where you were, but you weren't even in that place. Susan looked at him sharply. I explained this when you met me at the airport when I got back. Susan, there is more than one Hilton hotel in New York. Perhaps you called the wrong one. I told you I would be staying at the Hilton, and that's where I was. So you say. And what about that Sunday a couple of months ago, maybe more in June? I don't know what you mean, but I can assure you it was not what you think. It was a Sunday, and I had a flat tire on my way to church, so I hoped you'd come back from golf and help me. I know you never have your phone on Sundays. I called the club. The manager said you weren't there. He had seen your group go without you. Well, if we're talking about the same Sunday, then he may have been mistaken. I was late, but I joined the guys on the first tee. I had stopped by Phil Tremett's house for a brief chat. I knew Phil wanted Tom Gould to take over sooner, but the rest of the board was hesitant to let me go. I just dropped by to reassure Phil that I was only 50 and still eager to continue as long as they needed me. He didn't like that, but it took him longer than I expected. In fact, it took 3 months, but eventually, he got the backing he needed for me to take a part-time retirement on good terms, just like we both wanted. I didn't tell you because I didn't want to give you false hope. I thought it was better for Phil to handle things quietly. Oh God, I'm so sorry, Greg. This just makes my mistake with David feel even worse. Yes, I guess it does. But while we're on the subject, why don't you explain what was so special about him? Well, there's no real reason. I was lonely and bored. I was frustrated that you still hadn't retired as you promised. I was sure you had strayed before, even last July. So when I found myself getting close to a younger man who seemed interested in me, I let it go too far. It was never serious. Oh, I'm so sorry. And Susan broke down in tears again. Greg handed her his handkerchief. He was at a loss for words. He felt shocked. For 20 years, his wife, his closest friend, and his partner in everything thought he was unfaithful. That was how little she understood him. He felt hurt, insulted, and angry. He had doubts about whether he could truly move on from what had happened between her and Shiner. He wasn't sure if he wanted to stay married to someone who saw their relationship so casually as Susan had. But now he realized how little she thought of him. For over 20 years she believed he was unfaithful, and she seemed to have so little respect for herself that she accepted it. Well, Susan, if your excuse for all of this is that you misunderstood me and that you didn't share your worries and fears all these years, then I'm sorry. As sad as it makes me feel, I think it's better for me to leave. Susan looked at him with tears in her eyes. Please, Greg, Let's try counseling so we can understand each other better. I'm very sorry. I do care about you and want you back. No, Susan. You have not truly respected our relationship. You may forgive easily or perhaps do not value yourself enough, but this is not love. You misjudge and hurt me. As he spoke, Greg stood up. Goodbye, Susan, and I wish you the best in your future. And Greg walked away from Susan, his home, and a big part of his life. He felt a deep sadness as he returned to his hotel. Inside, he had hoped that Susan would give him a real reason, something to pull him back. Instead, she seemed to dismiss his feelings. As he sat down, George noticed him. Looks like you could use a call to Chantel just to lift your spirits. Greg looked up. I talked with my wife tonight. I told her I plan to go through with the divorce. I guess I should feel relieved. This marks the start of my new chapter. There's so much to think about for my future. I can't keep living here. Why don't you talk to management? They have a few apartments they use for short stays. They might work something out with you for a few months. It could be a nice step towards your new life. That sounds like a good idea, George. I'll definitely think about it. A place to gather friends as I embrace my new freedom, right? Greg smiled weakly, yet he felt a gap inside. He decided to spend Christmas in Thailand, a place where he thought he could escape reminders of the family life he had lost. This also allowed Melissa and Jude to stay with their mother without feeling conflicted. There was a slight delay in the divorce as Susan's lawyers discussed the settlement. However, when this began to take longer than expected, Greg spoke with Melissa and Jude, who then talked to their mother, leading to a quick agreement on the settlement. By Easter, Greg found his new home, just a week after his divorce was finalized. A country house hotel in a small village just outside of town had gone out of business, and a developer bought it to turn it into luxury apartments while keeping the hotel's swimming pool, tennis courts, and lovely grounds for the new residents. Greg moved into a nice two-bedroom apartment on the second floor. After settling in, Greg began to shop at the local stores. One day, he accidentally bumped into a woman at the post office. The next week, he saw her again at the local grocery store and stood behind her in line. They exchanged friendly comments, which led to having coffee at a nearby cafe. Her name was Mary. She was a widow with twin sons and was 42 years old. With her sons away at university, she now had more free time. Their friendship grew closer over time, but it took over a month before they decided to spend a night together. They later enjoyed a long weekend in Prague and then a week in Madeira, which brought them both joy. In July, Jude graduated, and he and Greg went on a 5-week road trip across America. Greg invited Mary, but she wanted to stay home for her son's return from university. So it became a trip for just the boys. They had a fantastic time and grew even closer. Jude would squeeze Greg's arm or hand when he noticed Greg lost in thought about moments he missed with Susan. On the nights Jude explored bars and clubs, Greg often thought of Mary, while knowing that her sons were still her main concern. After returning from America, Greg started planning his next adventure. He found a guided hiking trip to the Andes in Peru to explore some Inca trails, including Machu Picchu. The trip involved challenging hikes and camping, which he found exciting, but Mary was not interested. Greg started to feel that her sons were more important than he was, and she seemed to prefer a more luxurious way to travel. He understood that a devoted mother would care deeply for her children, yet feeling second in her priorities bothered him. He often compared his doubts about Mary to his memories of Susan, who also enjoyed adventurous activities, believing they added excitement to their lives. For the 1000th time, he wondered if he had made the right choice in divorcing Susan. After a long dinner, he finally got Mary to agree to at least think about joining him in Peru. Then Melissa and Carl announced their engagement. To celebrate, Greg decided to host a small gathering in his new apartment, with Mary helping to plan it. Her twin sons would come for the first time to meet Jude and Melissa, and after some encouragement from Mary, Greg agreed to invite Susan. As the day of the gathering got closer, Greg felt more and more nervous about seeing Susan again. His relationship with Mary was good, but she wasn't Susan, and he wasn't sure if she would ever mean as much to him. With Mary, everything was exciting but also a bit tough. He worried about taking on the role of a father for her 2 young sons. He realized Mary wasn't as adventurous as he was, and he missed the comfort and security that came from being married for 25 years. However, if she decided to go with him to Peru, that might help. What made him more anxious was Jude. One night at the pub, Jude had expressed hope that Greg would go back to Susan. "She still cares about you, Dad. I've told her to fight for you, so give her a chance when she does." This gathering was the first time Greg had seen Susan since they talked about his decision to end their marriage. He was surprised by her change. She had gained weight, her hair looked dull, and her outfit did not suit her well. As the host, Greg was busy welcoming guests, including Carl's parents and his sister. Even with all the people around, he kept glancing at Susan. She didn't speak much with him during the day and seemed to be drinking more than he was comfortable with. Later on, Mel pulled him aside and told him that Susan was upset and had gone to the bedroom. Jude joined them, and they both felt it was time for Greg to talk to their mother. Greg walked quietly into the bedroom. Susan was sitting on the edge of the bed, wiping her eyes. He saw a glass on the cabinet beside her. "I see today is hard for you, Susan, but I'm glad you came." Susan looked up and Greg waited for her to say something. Finally, she replied, "Yes, I knew I had to face this someday, but it just reminds me of everything we've lost." "Don't you feel that too, Greg?" "Yes and no. Yes, there were losses. But no, an engagement isn't sad. Carl is a good person and he cares for Mel. Their engagement can show us there is hope for the future, even after all we've been through. Maybe for you. You seem to have found someone else quickly. You sound disappointed." "Why wouldn't I be? I gave my heart to my husband, took care of his children, and once I made a mistake with someone briefly. And what does my husband do? He doesn't try to talk it out. He just leaves and divorces me. He goes off to travel with someone new. That's enough. I thought you were stronger than this. Life has been tough on you and it's been hard for me too. But there's still a way to find joy. If you don't like how things are, it's your choice to change it. If you keep holding on to bitterness and anger, there's a place at 43 Manvers Street that might suit you." "What do you mean by that?" "It's a place for those who don't take responsibility when things go wrong. Personally, I wouldn't want anything to do with it." Greg looked at her seriously before walking back into the party. Mary didn't go to Peru. It was a big decision, but she didn't want adventures that meant camping and hard work, so Greg went alone. He met an Australian woman named Brenda on his trip. They enjoyed some good times together, but it wasn't a serious connection. In the end, she went back to Australia, and Greg returned to the UK, both knowing they probably wouldn't meet again. When Greg got back, he took Mary out to dinner, but they both knew their relationship had ended. At best, they could be friends, nothing more. Without Susan or Mary, Greg felt lonely. He put on a strong face for the world, but many nights were spent at home, thinking about a future that seemed empty. His only hope was in planning new trips, wishing he could persuade Jude to join him on another adventure soon. Greg would happily pay for it, but Jude, being new at his job, didn't have much vacation time. A few months later, Jude came to visit for the weekend. On Saturday night, Greg took him out for a nice steak at the local pub. Even though Greg tried to convince him, Jude said no to a week in Iceland driving across frozen lakes with his dad. After dinner, they went back to Greg's apartment for a drink, which turned into a couple more. As Greg poured another drink, he asked, "How's your mother?" "Still having a hard time. She doesn't look well and is definitely drinking more than she should. But I get tired of telling her what to do. She really needs you. Are you sure there's no way to fix things? You've got no one, and she really did care about you. I think she still does." "So what happened to her wanting to fight for me?" "She was supposed to. I told her to. If she cared for you and wanted you, why didn't she fight for you then? But she's just too caught up in her own troubles." Greg handed Jude his drink and took a seat. Jude stood up at the same time. "I need to go to bed." He took a sip of brandy and turned toward the door. Greg didn't pay attention to Jude heading to bed. "At that time, I really wondered if I should forgive her. But then she said she thought I had been unfaithful, having many affairs during our marriage. I found that very hurtful. It made our whole marriage feel false to me. But it also showed that she didn't respect herself if she thought she could tolerate that for years. How could I love and respect someone who doesn't respect themselves?" Jude took another sip of brandy as he turned to look at his father. "How do you feel about yourself now, Dad? Living on your own?" Oh, I'm all right. At least I can look at myself in the mirror every morning. Jude waved goodbye to his father and walked to his room. He didn't catch Greg's soft reply. But you're right. My life feels empty. I've done everything I was supposed to do, kept my self-respect, acted with honesty. And now I'm just a lonely old man with no one to care for, or who cares for me. Greg sat, sipping his drink, his tears falling into the glass. Story 2. No place to go. Lynn's voice was weak. I love you. I'm sorry. I wanted to tell her to rest, to save her strength, but she was already gone. A month ago, cancer took my wife of 22 years. She left me and our 3 children, Jenny, our eldest at 18, Matt, my only son, 15, and our youngest, 13-year-old Paula. Lynn's passing was hard on all of us, especially Matt and Paula. I was somewhat ready for the sadness. Grief felt familiar to me. My mother had died in a car crash when I was 7, and my father passed away from a heart issue when I was in college. Lynn supported me through losing my father, and something she shared made it easier. It was a saying I liked. Grief is love with nowhere to go. I had heard it in different forms, but this was my favorite, the one Lynn told me, and now I was passing it on to our children. It was a difficult lesson, but one they needed from their mother. Matt found it especially comforting. He said it reminded him of a lesson from one of his superhero shows. Whatever helped him was good. The kids were seeing a grief counselor, and I was too. That was helpful as well. But in the end, only time could help heal our hearts, if it could at all. I tried to share my feelings without overwhelming them with my sadness. That was hard for me, but it was a skill I learned from Lynn. My mother had been the one who could handle emotions well, and when she was gone, I was left with my father's tough demeanor. He loved me, but he found it hard to show it. He expressed little emotion. He cried at my mother's funeral, but that was all. He didn't stop me from grieving, but he didn't guide me through it either. My ability to understand my feelings was stunted in childhood, and it wasn't until I met and loved Lynn that I learned to open up again. I never became as good at it as she was. Those are lessons you learn early on or not at all. But slowly, throughout our relationship and marriage, I learned to express myself. She helped me deal with my grief for my father in ways he had never been able to guide me through after my mother. She taught me to express love openly. It was a strength I could use to face the world, not a weakness that could be taken advantage of. She was the greatest love of my life. Her passing was the biggest test of all the lessons she had given me. Lynn was a very emotional person, especially in our younger days. She came from a free-spirited family. Her father was a writer, and her mother was a painter. She felt a bit carefree until after our children arrived. She relied on me to be the main supporter and to take care of the daily tasks in our lives. But when Paula turned 1, she became a strong partner. She switched from being passive to being active and organized. She still had moments of creativity, which I loved, but she became the steady partner that someone with 3 young children needed. Her planning was a great help after she was gone. That is why we had life insurance even at a young age. It is why she made arrangements for her funeral ahead of time, so I wouldn't have to manage that while caring for our children and myself. And it is why Marcus Devereaux was at my door with a leather bag in his hand. Mr. Devereaux had called me the day before. He said he was a lawyer, and that Lynn had asked him to handle a special request not included in our will. He wouldn't share more over the phone, but requested to come to my home the next day at 1 o'clock. When I asked why we couldn't meet at his office or mine, he said that the time and place were part of Lynn's instructions for him. He was a tall and slender man, with a shaved head and a gray beard. It was hard to guess his age, but I thought he might be 10 to 15 years older than me. He wore a well-fitted suit without a coat, which seemed unusual for the chilly weather, but not completely out of place. He greeted me with a kind smile, though it felt a bit distant. Mr. Jenkins? He had a surprisingly deep voice for his slim build, a rich sound. Curt. I shook his hand. It was a good grip, firm and respectful. Marcus Devereaux. Just Marcus, if you'd like. May I come in? I led him to the living room. Before I could offer him a seat or a drink, he asked, "Which direction is your dining room? Your wife was very specific in her instructions." I raised an eyebrow and he smiled again. I know it sounds strange, but it's not the oddest request I've received in my work. I shrugged and motioned for him to follow. When we reached the dining room, I asked, "What is this about? Please be patient. I promise we will get to that soon." He glanced around. "Do you have a small trash can? A wastebasket, something like that?" "Sure, I'll grab one." When I returned from my home office, he gestured for me to sit down and place the trash can beside me. Afterwards, he sat across from me at the table, in the spot where Lynn usually sat. "Kurt, can you tell me about Lynn? I only had a short time with her, just a few hours. I'm sorry to say she was in a lot of pain, but she was very focused. What was she like as a person and a mother?" "Lynn was wonderful, funny, smart, and loving. She had a great laugh." He looked at me kindly as I smiled sadly. "I think I will miss that the most. The house feels so empty without her." I shook my head. Her parents were creative people, and she had a lot of that spirit. She was a bit scatterbrained when we were younger, but she settled down when the kids arrived. By the time Paula started school, she was always there for them. She was an amazing mom. She always made time for them. And what was she like as a wife? I felt a strange feeling, almost like a warning. "What do you mean by that?" Marcus nodded slightly. "Part of it is my own curiosity, but also, this information would help me. I can't say more right now, but I assure you that sharing your thoughts about her is what she would have wanted." This was awkward. He was a stranger and a lawyer. It felt like a tricky situation, but if it was what Lynn wanted. I sighed. She was a wonderful wife. The best. She was a caring partner. I felt I could talk to her about anything, and I'm pretty sure she felt the same. We had our problems like all couples do, but most of those were resolved years ago. She was my support when she got her diagnosis. I don't think I would have gotten through it without her. I looked down at my hands. I will miss her for the rest of my life. She meant everything to me. "Thank you, Kurt. I can tell you that she loved you very much. She always spoke highly of you." Even through my sadness, I could tell he meant it. He shook his head. "Maybe we should begin." Marcus set his bag on the table and took out 4 items. An envelope, a bottle of scotch, and 2 glasses. Each item caught my attention. The envelope had my name on it in Lynn's beautiful handwriting. The scotch was a sealed Macallan 25-year sherry oak, a costly bottle, and the glasses, while simple, felt strangely familiar. When Lynn had important news to share, we would sit like this. She would wait until school was out or the evening when the kids wouldn't interrupt us. She would bring out 2 glasses and a bottle of scotch, pouring a small amount for each of us. After we finished, she would pour a bit more, which we would leave untouched until she finished sharing her news. It was a tradition she learned early in our marriage to help me cope with difficult feelings during tough times. The pain felt both familiar and deep. When she told me about losing her mother, this was how she shared the news. When she got fired from her job, this was how she broke it to me. And when she found out about her health issue, this was the way she chose to share it. This pattern shaped how I dealt with my pain, giving it a kind of organization instead of letting it just overwhelm me. He poured us each a drink and handed me mine. I took a small sip. It was good scotch, and I wanted to enjoy it. Sipping also gave me time to think. "Marcus, why are you here?" His voice was calm. "Your wife asked me to help with what we're doing right now. I can't give you details until we finish the first steps." "How did you get hired? I don't remember hearing about you until yesterday." Marcus paused, choosing his words carefully. "Your wife spoke with several lawyers to find one she thought was right for this job, but I can't share the details of her needs until after we finish the first steps. And I guess the first step is reading the letter." "Yes." "Have you seen it?" He nodded. "I helped her write it. No one else was involved." I took a deep breath and finished my drink. Then I reached for the letter. Instead, he picked up the bottle again and leaned over to pour more into my glass. His deep voice said, "Drink." I furrowed my brows. "No, that's not how it works. Lynn would pour me 1 drink, I'd finish it, and then I'd have the second one after she shared her news." His voice was steady, with a slight hint of sadness. "Mr. Jenkins, Kurt, I am the only person who knows what is in that envelope. I'm asking you to drink the second one now, before you read it." I hesitated, not lifting the glass to my lips. "Marcus, what is—" "Drink." His voice turned sympathetic but firm. Please, Kurt. You don't know me, and you don't have to trust me, but as a man, drink. I shouldn't have downed it so quickly, but my usual routine had already changed, so what did it matter in the end? He held out his hand for the glass, then gave me the envelope. As I opened it, he poured more into my glass but kept it on his side of the table. I raised an eyebrow. If I give it back now, you'll finish it before I'm halfway through. I pulled out a letter. It was long, several pages typed. I glanced through it quickly, not really reading, and only saw Lynn's signature at the end. Going back to the first page, I started to read silently. My dear love, this is the hardest letter I've ever had to write. I love you so much, and I know you love me too. I realize you must be hurting right now. That's why I asked Mr. Devereaux delivered this a month after I passed away, so you wouldn't have to manage what you will read here while still dealing with your grief. It might seem strange to wait like this, but I promise you I'm doing it out of love for you and our children. I need to say this again. I love you. You are the greatest love of my life. I wish things had turned out differently. I wanted us to enjoy our later years together, traveling and spending time with our grandchildren. My biggest regret is not my passing. It's that my absence will leave you alone for a long time. I hope you find someone to share your life with. I hope you discover an even greater love after I'm gone, a love that makes our time together feel smaller by comparison. I must say that I love you again because what comes next is hard to share. It may make you question my feelings. That thought hurts me more than anything else. But I know you well, my dear. I can imagine how you will feel after reading this letter. I am truly sorry for putting you through this, but please don't doubt that I love you more than anyone else I've ever loved. I couldn't have hoped for a better partner. The words in this letter are meant to explain my actions and how they will affect your future. They are not meant to excuse what I've done. I have no excuses to offer. I'm not trying to ask for your forgiveness. I understand I don't deserve it. But I hope this will help you understand the difficult situation you've faced. If I could take this weight from you, I would do anything. But I can't. I can only share what I've done and hope you can heal from the truth one day. Kurt, the reality is this. You are the greatest love of my life, but you are not the only person I've cared for while we were together. I read that line several times to make sure I understood it correctly. Kurt, the reality is this. You are the greatest love of my life, but you are not the only person I've cared for while we were together. You are not the only person I've cared for while we were together. I blinked and looked up at Marcus's face. He nodded knowingly. I glanced at the tumbler just out of reach. He had been right. With a sigh, he said, I'm sorry, Kurt. It gets harder. I opened my mouth to respond, but he simply motioned to the letter. We hadn't finished reading the original instructions. I write these words with deep shame. Please understand. You did nothing wrong. You are not to blame for my choices, even if I once convinced myself otherwise. You are, as I wrote before, the best partner I could have asked for. You were a wonderful support, a caring provider, and a fantastic parent. You are not why I stumbled. I am. I wavered because I was weak, proud, and foolish. I wavered because I thought I needed something you could not give me, though I never asked you for it. I believed I understood the limits of your love, but I realized those limits were really my own. I will share things that you may not want to hear. I do this because Mr. Devereaux convinced me it was better to be honest. I do not mean to show off my weaknesses. They bring me shame. But I have come to the end of my road, and my shame no longer matters. What matters is your ability to move forward and ensure our children's happiness. I glanced at Devereaux. Ensure our children's happiness? What do you mean? This feels wrong. He shook his head. No, Kurt. Her choices were made long before I met her. Feel free to call me any name you like. You would not be mistaken. But the understanding you need will come only if you keep reading. Frustrated, I turned back to the letter. My downfall began after Jennifer was born, but its roots were in the early days of our relationship. I was drawn to you from the start, then became deeply attached. You were quiet and reserved, yet stable and wise. My parents were smart, but they were not steady. They lived freely, almost recklessly. I loved them, but that's why I fell for you. I needed balance in my life. I yearned for someone who could make me feel safe and cared for. I did not expect you to love me. I wasn't sure you could at first. But as I learned more about you, as you shared your stories and memories, my feelings grew. You were a lot like your father, capable of love but not very good at showing it. Then he passed away unexpectedly, and you mourned. I tried to support you through that time, and your love poured out as I comforted you. I realized you could offer not only stability, but also love. I wanted to believe that my love would help you become a better and stronger person. I still hold on to that belief. I only wish it had made me a better woman. My pride at that time was rather high. I am sure you remember. You were not the only one interested in me, but I knew I was the first person you truly opened up to. It made me feel strong. It was a strength I hoped to use for our happiness. But with strength can come arrogance, even if it never fully shows itself in actions. We got married. Our early marriage was wonderful. We both had jobs, but we knew it was to help you build a business so I could one day stay home and take care of our children. You worked long hours, and I missed you a lot. Your love was like sunshine, and I longed for that warmth. I didn't cheat on you. That was the last thing on my mind. Instead, I missed a few of my birth control pills. But I should admit, I didn't forget them. I just didn't take them. That was the first lie I told you. I was confused. I thought if we had a child, you would be home more often instead of working even harder for our future. I believed a child's love could fill the gap until you could be there for me again. I didn't think about the many challenges that would come with having a baby and how they would test my patience and strength. Of course, our friends with kids warned me, but I didn't listen. You brought stability into my life, and I thought that would be enough. Even if it wasn't, I had learned how a woman with charm and a quick mind could sometimes glide around responsibilities like dancing in the rain. But none of that prepared me for what was ahead. Jennifer was a lovely child. I don't regret having her. However, I soon realized how mistaken my expectations had been. You did provide stability, but it meant you were away more while I was recovering. When you were home, your presence brightened our daughter's world, and I often felt unimportant. I know you didn't mean to make me feel this way, and I should have seen it coming. You didn't ignore me. You still showed your love when we were together. But that time was limited. Then, the second blow to our happiness came. My mother passed away just before Jennifer turned one. I was heartbroken, as you remember. We weren't very close at the end. You and she never got along, and she had doubts about your career choice. But I still loved her, and the loss was crushing. You tried to comfort me, but her passing didn't magically give you more time or energy to help me. You did what you could, but you struggled with your own grief, just as you had when your father died. Most of the time, I faced my feelings alone. Work grew harder as my own troubles deepened. It felt like a dark cloud followed me, and I couldn't shake it off. Looking back, I think I might have had postpartum depression. It could explain my mood and actions, but it doesn't excuse them. After my mother's death, I found it hard to get through each day, and eventually I lost my job. This didn't happen as you might think. There was a misunderstanding. With Jennifer's daycare paid for about a month, I decided to use that time to try to get back on my feet. I went to museums and galleries, hoping to reconnect with memories of my mother and the lively person I once was. That's when I met Jeremy. Who was Jeremy? I thought hard to remember if I had ever seen him before or heard his name, but I couldn't recall anything. He was a few years older than us, handsome, yet it was his passion for art that drew my attention. It felt like he was on a similar journey as I was. We ended up in 3 galleries together before he introduced himself. He was an artist, just like my mother, and seemed to be searching for his own direction in life. Jeremy came from a wealthy family but was seen as the odd one out. He had expected to inherit very little, but earlier that year a tragic event took his parents and older brother away, leaving him with sudden responsibilities. Now, he had to manage a family legacy that he didn't feel ready for. He had a small home and was used to some financial support, but now he had to deal with the complexities of wealth alongside those hired to help him. He wanted no part of the money or the grand house. He had turned away from that life for a reason, choosing to be an artist and keep his independence. Knowing it wouldn't be easy, he aimed to give away as much of his family's wealth as he could. Sadly, the people in charge were making it hard for him. Their jobs depended on the money they managed, which was linked to the family's wealth. At first, I didn't see this side of things. We just met and talked about art. I shared my challenges and he spoke about his. While I couldn't help him with everything, I noticed the main problem. He thought differently as an artist, making everyday tasks tricky for him. Many artists face this issue. The real world can teach important lessons. However, Jeremy had grown up in comfort, sheltered from the skills needed to live independently. Part of why I appreciated the support you gave me, Kurt, was because I had to grow up faster than most. Responsibilities would stack up, and if I didn't act, things would get messy. My parents sometimes missed important appointments, and by the age of 12, I was helping them with many things. When I turned 18 and went to college, I embraced my new freedom. It wasn't until I met you that I realized I could have both stability and the chance to express myself. Jeremy had different struggles. He was very aware of his feelings but found it hard to take care of himself. He needed someone to help him create a stable routine. Slowly, I began helping him organize his home, find reliable people to manage his money, and set up systems to help him handle his responsibilities without feeling overwhelmed. He really wanted to pay me fairly, and I told him what I used to make, but he chose to give me twice that amount on the side. That year was the first time I handled our taxes instead of you. Working with Jeremy brought back skills I had forgotten about, and I found joy in taking responsibility. I could get things done without needing help. In the past, I had mixed up the stress of running a household at a young age with the idea of managing my own duties. This is part of why I wanted to take on that responsibility. I also wasn't ready to share my situation with you yet. It wasn't about feeling ashamed in the usual way. Rather, I felt uncomfortable about losing my job and not starting the conversation. Every day I put it off made me feel worse. If I revealed how we stayed financially stable, I would expose my hidden struggles, which became a tough cycle. I knew I had to be honest, but it felt overwhelming. I also took on the job of balancing our checkbook during that time, if you remember. Jeremy paid me in cash, so I put the right amount in our account from my old job. Then I told you I got a raise and added a little extra. This helped ease our situation, and it allowed you to spend more time and care on both me and Jennifer. While the method wasn't ideal, the result was worth it. We were all happy, and Jeremy was happy too. I think he might have had some different ways of thinking, like ADHD or autism, but he never got a diagnosis. He could create beautiful moving sculptures, but struggled to keep his house in order. He remembered little facts about things he loved, but often forgot when to pay his bills. However, when his home was tidy, he could think more clearly. I arranged for a cleaner to help him, and his work improved a lot. I helped him organize his time, and he was much happier. I was like his personal assistant without a title, and it felt great. We became closer, not in a physical sense, but there was an emotional bond. He helped me through my mother's death and my complicated feelings about it, which I regret to say you couldn't fully help with at that time. You were loving, but that didn't give you the deeper emotional insight needed for such a tough situation. I helped him manage his difficult feelings about his family too. That was easier. He had felt like an outsider for so long that he had little warmth for them, and he couldn't stand their wealth and how they used it to hurt others. I started to stay late some nights to help him think about new projects he wanted to work on, or to brainstorm ideas. I didn't inherit any artistic talent from my parents, but I understood the practical side of things better than anyone else he knew. I could explain to him what was likely to work and give him good ideas of how long a project would take. As we spent more time together, I got better at these estimates. Over time, our friendship became closer. It wasn't because of any big fight between us. We were getting along well. It also wasn't because of a major event in his life. One night, while we were working late, he kissed me. It took me by surprise, but I realized that my feelings had already turned into love. I felt guilty for going against my promises to you, but my feelings for him felt real. I had kept him a secret from you, and maybe that made it easier to blur the lines between being co-workers, friends, and something deeper. I told myself I wasn't taking anything away from you. But that wasn't true. I felt like I deserved this, having supported two men in different ways and taken care of the children of one of them. It was a selfish way of thinking, but it was how I coped with my feelings. I often worked late and on weekends, spending most of my time focused on my job, but sometimes with Jeremy in a more personal way. I wanted to believe I was only trying to help. I glanced at the wastebasket next to me, finally understanding why it was there. Marcus hadn't put it next to me for the letter. My heart sank as I took deep breaths to calm down. Lynn, the love of my life and mother of my children, had not been faithful. It wasn't just once. It happened many times, possibly over years. I tried to pull myself together. Marcus watched me with concern. He knew there was nothing he could do to make me feel better, even though I had completed my responsibilities. I still wasn't quite sure why he was there, but I started to think it was to help me avoid making decisions I couldn't take back. I felt a strong desire for justice, but knew it wouldn't help. Slowly, I began to feel steadier. I looked back at the letter, hoping the worst was over, but deep down, I knew it likely wasn't. That wasn't the truth, of course. I felt like I deserved better, having helped 2 men and raised the children of one of them. I knew it was a prideful thought, but it was how I faced my hurt. I often worked late and sometimes spent personal time with Jeremy, thinking my actions were helping everyone. I wanted to believe that Jeremy got support. I was becoming a better partner for you, and you felt less burdened in providing for our family. That's what I told myself to push away the lingering guilt. I know you might have a lot of questions, but I cannot talk about my relationship with Jeremy. There are no details I can share that would help. Let me tell you this. If I had to pick someone to be with for the rest of my life, it would be you. No question. You are the best friend I have ever had. What I shared with Jeremy was just a wrong way to feel closer to you. Over the next 5 years. 5 years. I stood there, shaking. What? Why did you? I started to raise my voice. I really cared for her. Why did this happen? I wanted to face this unfairness and show my anger, but I held back. I was having a hard time dealing with everything, but I wouldn't give up. I stumbled to the nearby bathroom, feeling overwhelmed, and took a moment to gather myself before going back. Tears streamed down my face from sadness and because my heart felt broken again. I thought I had no more tears left after the last month. I was wrong. After splashing water on my face and rinsing my mouth for about 10 minutes, I took a deep breath and returned to face him. He was still there, looking unhappy. I stood behind my chair, gripping the top to steady myself. Why? He opened his mouth to speak, but I interrupted him. If you say anything about your orders, I will call for help. I could almost hear his teeth clench. Kurt, this isn't the first time someone has threatened me, but... He turned his head slightly. It is, maybe, the first time I felt it was fair. I want to answer your questions truly, but I can't just yet. It relates to the orders, but I can only give you the answers you need after you read the letter. I scoffed. What does that even mean? Devereaux sighed. How much of the letter have you read? Well, I just found out my wife was with someone for 5 years, so how much more could there be? He ignored my response and asked, if I had asked you how well your wife knew Jeremy before you read that letter, what would you have said? My fingers tightened on the back of the chair. I wanted to break it apart and throw it down. He watched me for a moment, showing sympathy but a bit of superiority, then said, I am not your enemy, Kurt. I know why you think that. I promise I only want what's best for you and your family. That's why I'm asking you to read the entire letter before asking more questions. Standing tall, I snapped, I need some fresh air. He nodded. The afternoon was cold as I stepped outside. I had left my jacket inside, wanting to feel the cool air. I was sweating, and my face was still damp. Leaning over the railing of my porch, I looked into the distance and tried to calm myself. I wished I had never met Marcus Devereaux. I wished my wife had been spared the pain that made her turn to him. I once thought I was loved, but when that idea was taken from me, I found solace in reading that letter again. For the first time, I truly hated her. Determined, I went back to my dining room and sat down, avoiding a look at Devereaux. Over the next 5 years, I became a true partner in our household. I contributed both financially and emotionally. I was a better mother and spouse as I took on more of the everyday responsibilities. Your stress levels decreased, and both our relationship and our quiet moments together improved as I became the partner you needed. I feel embarrassed admitting this. I should have always been this way for you. If I couldn't be, I should have found a way to reconnect with myself without stepping outside our partnership. But I didn't. I can't say I regret my time with Jeremy because I believe that experience helped me grow into who I needed to be. I don't think our relationship would have survived otherwise, as I might have grown resentful because of my own shortcomings. That may seem foolish, but I acknowledge I was naive. My bond with Jeremy ended in two phases. The first was after Matt was born. I wanted to refocus on our family and relationship. Jeremy was unhappy, but he understood. It may sound surprising, but he always respected you. I know some affair partners speak poorly of the spouse, but he never did that. He knew you were my first and greatest love, and he recognized he was taking time away from you, even if I didn't want to see it. I spoke highly of you, and he liked hearing about you and our family. He encouraged me to choose what was best for us, and cared enough to let me go when the time came. I helped him find a new assistant, a young man named Alan. He had a strong background in finance, and was likely more capable in that field than I was. I know Alan helped Jeremy with the financial issues in his family much better than I could. Jeremy and I stayed in touch, but cautiously. I didn't want you to discover my past relationship after it ended, so we spoke very little. By then, your business was thriving, and I finally told you that I had been let go. We could manage with me staying at home to care for the children. I did that for the next 2 years until I heard from Jeremy again. At first, I was hesitant to help him. I still cared about him, but I wanted to protect our relationship. Then he shared that he had cancer. My world felt like it had shifted. Although my feelings were less intense now, I still cared for him deeply. If he had only been my friend, I would have helped him, but he was someone who had played an important role in my growth. I couldn't turn down his request. That's when I asked you to let me put the kids in daycare for 3 days a week. Matt was about a year old then. I said I wanted to help out at a charity. This was partly true. Alan had helped Jeremy support a charity that gave money to struggling artists. But mostly, I was there to support Jeremy during his tough times. He was dealing with cancer, which had been found too late, and he was getting weaker. There were treatments, but they didn't have a good chance of working, and they would have made him feel worse, so he decided not to go through them. I was mainly his friend and caregiver, but I comforted him a few times. I couldn't say no to him. It brought him some peace and let him know that he would be remembered after he was gone. He lived for 6 more months, but the last 2 were in hospice care. I only visited him a few times, but I was there when he passed away. He held my hand and told me that I was very important to him. He knew I might not have felt the same way, and I didn't try to mislead him. But I made sure he understood that I cared for him and would miss him. After that, he closed his eyes. Less than an hour later, he was gone. You might remember that I struggled during my 2nd trimester with Paula. I was moody and upset at times, taking it out on you. I'm sorry for that. You were always so kind to me. I let you think it was just hormones, and part of it was that. But mostly I was grieving for my friend and had no one to share my sorrow with. I'm truly sorry. I regret many things. I had no other partners before or after him. Everything in my life outside that time was clear to you. Sometimes I didn't share everything about what I had been through, but it was only about that. After Jeremy passed away, and even during the years before that, I was dedicated to you and our family. I know that doesn't change things. I should have been faithful those years too, but I wasn't. I regret hurting you by sharing this. I thought I could take this secret with me forever. I had both good and selfish reasons. You deserve happiness. I believe that even if I lived a long life, I would not have strayed again. If I told you about my choices, I know you would want to leave, and you would be right to do so. But that wouldn't make you happy. I doubt you would have ever fully trusted or loved again. I'm not sure you will after reading this. And I cared for you. Until the end, I cared for you. My past actions don't show what a loving partner should do, but at the time, I thought they were justified. They were not. And I'm sorry. Just as I couldn't bear to hurt you, I couldn't stand the thought of losing you, so I never told you. I would not have shared this with you if it weren't for 2 important things. First, the kind of cancer that took Jeremy's life is the same one I have. It is not very common, but it isn't rare either, so it's not too surprising. There is a genetic aspect to it, making it more likely for someone to get it if they have a certain gene from a parent. If a person has the gene from both parents, the chances increase a lot, especially in young adults. I don't know if Jeremy had one or both of those genes. I suspect he did, given that he passed away so young. His family has a history of early deaths that sound like cancer. I am aware that I carry one of those genes. I understand that my sharing this with you has caused you pain. I worry that what I say next will hurt you even more. There is a high possibility that Matt is not your biological son, and a smaller chance that Paula is not your biological daughter. If they both have these genes, they could be at risk of an early passing. I gestured to Devereaux. Please, hand me the drink. He hesitated. I raised my voice slightly. I need the drink. He pushed the tumbler towards me, and I quickly drank it down. I have no justification for what I've done. I truly cared for you and Jeremy. You both look a lot alike, and as you've joked before, I seem to have a certain preference. I didn't believe you would ever find out. I knew that I was Jeremy's only partner, just as you were my only one, so I didn't think health issues would come into play. I regret my actions, but I know those words don't mean much to you now, and I feel I have gone past the point where they carry any value. Our children could be at risk. I hope you will make the right decision. I would have done the same, but I felt too weak and unsure of how to ask you to have them tested for the gene linked to this condition. If I had asked you, it would have revealed my unfaithfulness without any background, and I was too fragile to discuss it while you were already hurting from your own struggles. So I find myself asking you to be strong once again. There's also a financial matter involved with this situation. That's why I chose Mr. Devereaux to help me deliver this letter. I selected him not just for his knowledge of the laws, but also because of his life experience. I believe he can support you in making the best choices for yourself and our family. I won't presume to dictate what those choices should be, as I've lost the right to call myself a partner in your life. I cannot express how much I regret my choices. All I can say is that despite my faults, I truly love you. You are the greatest love of my life. You are the strongest person I know, with an amazing ability to love. Please use that love first for our children, and then, if you can, for finding a new partner who truly deserves you. I know this letter has hurt you. I hope it hasn't broken your heart so much that a better person cannot help mend it. With endless love and deep sadness, Lynn, I lifted my glass, and Devereaux poured another drink. I gestured again, and he filled it more. We drank in silence. What's the financial problem? I asked flatly. After Mr. Stein passed away, he gave most of his wealth away, but he kept a big part in an offshore account. He slid a paper across to me. There were many zeros on it. Lynn had access to it, but never took out any money. She said your family was doing well enough without it, and that she couldn't explain where the sudden money came from. Now that's not an issue, so she wanted you to think about, absolutely not. Thinking about how it could help your family. If you don't want it, it could go to your children as a trust or for college funds. I scoffed and said, yeah, my children. I took another sip. Not happening. We sat quietly for a moment, then he said, you raised them, right? Took them to school, cared for them when they were sick, fussed over them? I don't know you, Kurt, but Lynn did. She was sure that even if your two youngest might not be your biological kids, you would still see yourself as their father. She was correct. Why should I care about his kids? I grumbled. Yes, they're mine. She has taken so much from me in the time it took to read that letter. She doesn't get to take them too. Marcus leaned in slightly, his voice calm. Kurt, you have many choices to make, more than you might realize. Lynn asked me to help you think through everything and come to a choice that feels right for you. I don't believe you. Do you mean you don't believe I'm here to help? Or that Lynn wanted you to make a good decision for yourself? I thought for a moment. Definitely the second part. She clearly didn't care about me. If she sent you, it was to serve her wishes, not what's best for me. So, the first part too. Devereaux sighed. She did love you. I know you don't trust me, but I asked you some questions before you read the letter. What did you say when I asked how she was as a wife? A great wife, the best. Yeah, until I found out she had been unfaithful for a long time. What do you want me to say? Oh, it was years ago, let it go. Or I don't want to say anything bad about her now that she's gone. Not a chance. Lynn can... I stopped, struggling to find the right words. She can deal with the results of her choices, and I don't care what happens. That calm voice spoke again. I understand. No, you really don't. My wife had been unfaithful to me for 5 years, and here you are, sitting like a statue in a suit, just because you're being paid to keep me calm. I'm not going to calm down. Devereaux nodded slowly. You asked why your wife hired me. I told you I couldn't share my background until you read the letter. She wanted someone with specific legal skills, and I was an easy choice. I could name many other lawyers who are more qualified for this job. But then she asked for someone with personal experience in these matters. I didn't know why at first, but then I realized that a few who might connect the dots. She wanted someone fair and unbiased. I've worked as a temporary judge before. That role let me see if I wanted to pursue that path for a career. I decided that wasn't for me. She was looking for someone like me who has dealt with infidelity. I noticed he wasn't wearing a ring. He confirmed with a nod. I fit that requirement too. In the end, Lynn wanted someone who would genuinely support her. That's standard in this job. But she ran through many situations, especially about family law, asking which side I would choose. Overall, those scenarios reflect your situation. I scoffed. So, because you understood her questions and said you would support her, you got the job? No. I said I would support the husband. She wanted someone who would stand by you, making sure you received the best advice. After hearing her full story, I pointed out that there were things I would argue for that she might not like. Her response was straightforward. Whatever is best for Kurt and my children. I thought about it. He was a lawyer, which made me cautious. He was hired by my wife. Technically, she was the client. He could be saying anything for her benefit or his own. There was a lot of money at stake, but Lynn was right. I didn't actually need that money right now. I didn't even want it, considering how upset I felt. He shared one last thought as I weighed my choices. There's one more thing to think about. Until a few minutes ago, I was the only person who knew what was in that envelope. If you want other help, you'll have to bring in more people. And you know the saying about secrets. 3 can keep it if 2 are gone. Yeah. I frowned at him. Fine. You're here. Let's discuss this. You have some important choices to make. It's already 3, and I believe you need to pick up your children by 6? I nodded. All right. Let's say that not all of these choices need to be made today. You might want to think them over a bit. And that's okay. But it was important to understand what was happening. Fair enough? Taking my pause as agreement, he continued. 1. There's no reason to believe that anyone besides you, me, and maybe Alan knows about Lynn's actions. Alan seems happy with the charity he and Jeremy created, so Lynn's choices can stay a secret if you want. 2. You agree that your children will always be your children no matter the DNA, right? I nodded, even though I wasn't completely sure. 3. Your children's safety might be at risk. They will need some tests to find out if that's true. 4. There's a significant amount of money in an offshore account. I can help you access it in various legal ways, without revealing how you got it. You will pay some taxes on that money, but... He shrugged. 5. Lynn and Jeremy are no longer around. Jeremy donated all his money a long time ago, and it's been over 10 years since Lynn's actions. There's little proof left. I took a sip of my drink. That seems to cover it. Let's not focus on the money for now. It's been in that account for 12 years. It can wait a bit longer. The main concern is your children. To help you decide about that, I need you to be honest about some things that might stir strong feelings right now. With a small laugh and another sip, I replied, You think so? I shook my head. Being defensive wouldn't help, even if it felt natural. Fine, ask away. The questions I asked about Lynn earlier, about her being a person, a partner, and a mother. He raised a hand. I know you're thinking them over again, but if I hadn't come to you, you would still hold those feelings. What about your kids? Do they think similar things even if from a child's view? I pondered his question. Jenny and Lynn had their disagreements, but that was normal teenage behavior, just like when Matt and I argued. And seeing how they missed her, I had to admit, yeah, she was at least a good mom in their eyes, and maybe mine too. I'd change things if I could, but I wouldn't have contested shared custody, even knowing how she was. She really was a good mom. Marcus asked quietly, Do you want to change that view? Would your kids benefit or suffer from knowing what she did? There was a large window in the dining room. Lynn had loved that because it brought in a lot of light. I often found it annoying. It could be beautiful, but sometimes it was just too much. The afternoon sun lit up part of the room, leaving Marcus mostly in shadow. I felt like I was being questioned, and there were no good answers to what he was asking. I don't know. He linked his fingers together. I think you do. If the kids find out, how will that affect them? Will they hold a grudge? What will they gain from it? What about you? Right now, only you and I know the secret. Will exposing that your wife was unfaithful for years help anyone? I could feel my face getting warm. It's not fair. She shouldn't just get away with it. The older lawyer looked straight at me. She's gone, Kurt. She had a tough end knowing she would have to face what she did. She understood that the person she loved most would be hurt. Does it look to you like she escaped the consequences? I stared into my glass. Kind of. Yeah, it kind of does. I'm never going to get my chance to find peace. I can't shout my anger or call her names. I won't get to directly confront the other person. Never get to ask why it happened, really why. A faded memory came back to me. Something once sweet now turned bitter. I murmured, "No place to go." What did you say? I shook my head and turned my eyes back to Marcus. There was something Lynn told me when I was grieving my father's death. I passed on to my kids to help them with theirs. Grief is love without a place to go. He nodded. I've heard that too. I understand how it can bring some comfort. My voice was thick with hurt. Yeah, but here's the thing. I grimaced, not at him, but at the thoughts swirling in my head. What about resentment with no place to go? Can you help me with that? Now it was his turn to take a sip. I'm not sure. He chuckled softly. Lawyers choose words for clarity, not for understanding. If you're looking for a poet, I'm probably not the right person for that. He tilted his head. But if I had to take a guess, frustration. I lifted my drink in acknowledgement. That's not a bad answer. Maybe it is. I'll think about it. I finished my drink in one gulp. Marcus held up the bottle, but I shook my head. Thanks, but I want to keep my head clear. This is good scotch. Did Lynn buy this with her own money? He smiled, showing his bright teeth in the dim light. No, she paid for a cheaper bottle, but this... He shook his head. This seemed special enough for the occasion. It's from my personal collection. Well, I appreciate it. It's nice to know someone is looking out for me. Marcus spoke softly. She cared for you, you know. In the end, I didn't spend a lot of time with her, but I have seen many tough situations in my work, and... He looked down, lost in thought. And beyond that. He smiled at me again, his expression genuine, showing real feeling in his voice and face. Not just a serious lawyer, but someone with a history. You can tell who truly feels sorry and who is just pretending. Lynn, whatever else I can say, really regretted what she did. She felt bad about what she'd have to say to you. Well, that won't change anything, I said, shaking my head. I can feel sorry for myself later. I tapped my fingers on the table to steer us back. All right, I agree. Telling my kids that their mom made mistakes isn't necessary, but I still need to get them checked out. I can organize that for you. I have a private doctor who respects confidentiality. The real question is, do you just want a health checkup, or do you want to know if you are their biological father as well? I'm not sure. I stood and looked out the window. If I find out one of them has something that needs both parents, then I guess I'll know what I need to understand. Unfortunately, it's not that simple. Your wife had it as a recessive trait. We believe Jeremy has it as a dominant trait. We don't know if you have it as recessive or dominant. To figure that out, you would need to have a health checkup too. It's a good idea, but it still might not give you a clear answer. It was quiet outside, the stillness of a suburban afternoon with no school in session. I thought of my kids playing in the yard. Those days were gone now, fading with time. I smiled at the memory but felt a sting at the thought. I'm not sure I want to know. Marcus sighed behind me. I get it. It's your choice. But I think it's important for you to find out. I turned to look at him. Why do you say that? I don't know you well, Kurt. From this talk and what I've heard from Lynn, I can't tell if you can handle knowing something that's just out of reach. For me, the curiosity would be too much. More importantly, you need to think about your kids. I thought we agreed they don't have to know. Marcus nodded. They don't have to know? Sure. But what if they find out by chance? Your oldest is 18. What if, in honor of Lynn, she buys everyone one of those DNA kits for Christmas? She never met your parents or Lynn's mom. It makes sense someone might do that. And if she does, he left the thought hanging. Then a little while later, she finds out she has different family connections that Matt or Paula don't have. And the questions begin. This is complicated. My head felt heavy. Thanks, Lynn, I said under my breath. You've left me with another hard choice. I can't even choose whether to know or not know. I waved my hand in Marcus's direction. Okay, let's get tests for everyone. Health checks and the other kind. We'll just tell the kids we are checking for something unusual. And then, if I find out, I guess I'll figure it out when I know more. He stood up. Then that's all we can do for today. Think about what you want to do with the money. I know you're angry, but think about what it could mean for your children. I could tell you to forget about this for now, but I know that's hard. Instead, try to focus on your kids. They need you now, and maybe you can find strength in caring for them. We walked to the front door, leaving behind the dining room table, the important items, and the letter that shattered the idea of my happy marriage. At the door, he placed a hand on my shoulder, a comforting gesture for someone I hardly knew. It felt good. The touch almost overwhelmed me. Kurt, I thought this would go very differently. I don't know how you managed all this without falling apart or sending me away. I don't think I could have. I believe you can get through this. I nodded and spoke with a shaky voice. Thanks. He paused. Do you want me to stay a bit longer? I'd be glad to. I shook my head. No. I need some time alone to think before I get the kids. I have to get ready for them. Marcus nodded understandingly. I'll let you know when the doctor will come to take the samples. I'll make sure to get the results so your children won't see them. We can meet at my office when they come in to discuss what to do next for you and the money. We said our goodbyes, and he left. I slid down the door once his car was gone, letting go of my feelings now that I was alone. My sobs filled the empty house, sounding more like a child's cries than a man's. I had lost my wife once, a month ago. Now I felt that loss again, and this time it hurt even more. I sat there almost frozen until the alarm on my phone rang, reminding me it was time to get the kids. I hurried to clean myself and the house, then drove over, trying to keep a brave face. They could tell I had been crying, but I brushed it off. They thought I was just sad about their mother and trying to be strong for them. They were right, but also very wrong. My mask slipped a few times that week. Bitterness came into my voice when I talked about their mother. Jenny caught me looking at Lynn's wedding photo, my feelings shifting between sadness and anger. Of all the kids, I think she guessed that I wasn't just sad about her mother's death. But she let it be. We all grieve in our own ways. I think she wanted to think my anger was just that of a father trying to raise his children alone, a wild anger that would fade. I would do my best to keep that picture for her. The doctor came and went. I told the kids that we were checking their health to see if they inherited the same gene as their mother. They mostly shrugged and went along with it. It was silly, but I held my breath for a moment when Matt and Paula had their tests. A few days later, Marcus returned to my home with 4 sealed envelopes that held our results. The drinks were out again, but this time we had no idea if the news was good or bad. Still, a small drink to calm my nerves seemed right. We chatted a bit before getting to the important part. I was stalling. I knew it, and so did he, but he didn't press me. Finally, feeling foolish, I opened the first envelope, the one with my results. I was clear, showing no signs of the genetic issue that Lynn had. Next was Jenny. I opened her envelope quickly. I knew she might be at risk, and I needed to find out fast. Jennifer was my daughter in every way. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding, but then I saw the other result. She shared the recessive version of the gene with her mother. She would need to have regular health tests for the rest of her life, but it was a small price for her safety. My hand hovered over Matt's envelope, but I moved to Paula's. Maybe it was cowardly, but he was my only son. Finding out that either of my kids wasn't biologically mine would crush me, but that would hurt a little more. When I opened it, I found that my baby girl was indeed mine, and that she was free from the same issue that had taken her mother's life. I hesitated. I almost asked Marcus to open Matt's envelope, but I couldn't. This was my life and my son's, and I would face the truth myself. I tore open the paper and read the results inside. Tears filled my eyes, and I started to cry. Marcus spoke softly. "Kurt, I'm sorry." My voice was shaky. Mine. Mine, he's mine. Any more words were lost in the feelings I couldn't control. He was mine, and he did not carry the issue. My children were mine in every way, not just because I raised them, but because they were part of me. Some might think this belief was silly and outdated, that it didn't matter if they shared my DNA. In a way, they were right. But it wasn't the DNA I cared about. My love for them was not affected by anything their mother had said. She had allowed me to think they were mine without truly knowing. Now I understood the truth. It felt strange, but it mattered more than anything else at that moment. Marcus waited patiently as I gathered my thoughts. He sat sipping his drink while I went to the guest bathroom and washed my face. When I came back, he asked, "Have you thought about what to do with the money?" "I don't want it." He raised an eyebrow. "You don't want the money, or you don't want to take it because of where it comes from?" "Don't be so detailed." Marcus grinned. "I'm a lawyer. It's my job." He shook his head. "I get that you may not want the money since it feels wrong. But what about for your children? For their college? Or as a savings for the future? I could set up funds for each of them, and we could say it came from a life insurance policy. They wouldn't need to know the truth." "I'd know. And even if I did that, it's still money. That's what money is for." He laughed. "If I pay for their college with it, I'm not truly paying because my money would go somewhere else. In a way, I'd still be using his money." He tilted his head. "Maybe, but I think you're viewing it differently." A smile grew on his face. "I'll explain it more, and hopefully you'll understand better." I flinched at the memory of how I had raised my voice at him before. His tone shifted and he became serious. There used to be lawsuits called alienation of affection suits. These were meant to hold someone accountable for causing problems in a marriage. They aren't common anymore because of no-fault divorces, and they were often not very effective. If someone had enough money to pay for a lawsuit, they usually had ways to hide it. These cases were difficult to prove, so they weren't worth it. But we still have many ways to claim money from people for wrongdoings, for pain and suffering, emotional distress, and so on. Even if Jeremy were alive, you wouldn't be able to sue him and get any money. If Lynn were alive and you'd divorced her, you might not have received much from this account. It could have gone unnoticed. But it's here now. You have it. You have to stop thinking of it as a gift from Jeremy to your wife, and instead see it as what it can mean for you. A settlement. It's a payout from a case that you never had to start and would never have won. You feel angry with her? That's fine. She's not here anymore, and you know what she did. You feel upset with him? That's fine too. He's gone, and now you have his money. You can use it however you like, even to live a life he wouldn't have wanted. They hurt you, both of them. They were selfish and dishonest. Lynn told you everything in the end, which stopped you from sharing how you felt. I get all that. What I see differently is this. The money you mentioned is yours now. It could help a charity, grow in a bank, or go to someone else. Or it could give you and your children a better life. "I'll know where it came from," I said with frustration. "Good. So every time you use it, you can think of it as a step forward. They were selfish. You have the right to think about your own needs, too. Your wife put a lot on your plate. Her choices, your worries about being fooled, your concerns for your children's futures, and keeping them safe from the truth, all of that." He shook his head. "I liked Lynn, from what I saw. I believe she felt sorry for what she did. But sometimes feeling sorry isn't enough. She hurt you. They both did. Don't add to your pain by holding on to hurt from people who are gone. Take the money, Kurt. Give some to your kids and tell them it's from investments you've made. You can cash out of your company or invest in it if you prefer. But leaving it behind? No. That might seem honorable, but it's not. You're not taking a bribe. You're claiming what is yours." I was angry at the thought that any kind of tainted money could help ease my hurt. "Is that what you did in your own divorce? Get back at them?" His expression changed, and he seemed tired. "No." I started to speak, but he gently continued. "No. I made mistakes, Kurt. I felt the weight of those mistakes." He looked away. "Lynn wanted someone who knew the pain of betrayal to be here for you. Someone who had hurt the people he cared about for his own sake. I was unfaithful to a good partner for years, thinking I deserved it because I was successful. The regret in his voice was clear. I was foolish. I had everything. He poured another drink and finished it quickly. Sheila found out. It didn't end well. She discovered my mistakes because of something I did. The details don't matter. She found out, and everything fell apart. My marriage, my relationship with my kids, my friendships, everything that really mattered. I wanted to make things right, but she wouldn't accept anything from me, wouldn't work with me at all. He shook his head. There was nothing I could do to fix it. She divorced me, took everything. I gave her even more than she asked for. Not that she would ever forgive me. I knew that wasn't going to happen. But maybe, just maybe, she could find a way to move on. But she didn't. The anger consumed her. For the last year of her life, she struggled with the unfairness of it all. She had every right to feel that way. Still, it was too much for her. I played a part in her pain. She passed away, and I lost the love of my life because of my selfish actions. He looked down at his empty glass. My kids. It's been 10 years, and they have only just started talking to me again. I'm so grateful they let me back into their lives. I got to meet my 5-year-old grandson last month. I missed all those moments. Marcus shook his head, trying to shake off the heaviness. He put on a serious expression, but it didn't hide the hurt. Kurt, take the money or don't. I think you should. It's not about forgiving them. No court would ever say a person must forgive another to accept their judgment. But even if you choose not to take the money, you have to find a way to not hold on to the hate. Eventually, he looked at me, his eyes shiny with tears. I thought a lot about what you asked last week. What is hate with no place to go? At first I thought rage, but that's just part of the process, like going through the stages of grief. When hate reaches its end, without a way to move forward, it leads to despair. Hate without an outlet can be harmful. It can take over your spirit, making you feel empty, even when you're surrounded by others. He gazed up at the ceiling. It took Sheila from me. The hate weighs on me now. I hate myself. Lynn felt that way too at the end. I envied her for not having to carry that burden anymore. I've struggled to let go of it for 10 years. But now, with my little grandson, I can feel some of that self-hate starting to lift. Just a bit. I can only hope it's soon enough to save me. He turned back to me, tears on his face. Don't let this be your story, Kurt. Find a way to let the hate go. Epilogue 10 years later. Hey, Lynn. I brushed some dirt off her gravestone. It had been a while since anyone visited. The kids had moved far away. Jenny was married and had 2 children, and Matt was expecting his first child. Paula was still trying to find her path in life. I had to believe she would get there eventually. I placed the flowers on my ex-wife's grave. Lilies were her favorite. I know I haven't come by in a long time. I won't apologize. We can never balance our past. But I needed to talk to you one last time. The chilly air made me feel more awake, but it also felt uncomfortable. At 54, I had aches and pains I didn't have 10 years ago, and the cold made them worse. But that didn't matter. This wouldn't take long. I hated you for a long time, but I loved you a little too. I still do. Despite your many faults, you were a good mother. After your affair, you were even a decent partner in your own way. The lies were. Well, I sighed. It doesn't matter now. I tried to bury my love for you under hate and anger, but I never could completely. I guess I never will. I glanced at the gray sky, noticing that snow would fall again soon. I needed to thank you for one last thing, not the money. Marcus convinced me that I deserved that for everything you put me through. It wasn't a gift or a bribe. It was an acknowledgement of your actions. No, it was for Marcus. You saved my life when you chose him. He helped me let go of my hatred. It took a long time, and there's still a bit of it in my heart. But without him, I think your betrayal would have taken over my life. So thank you for that choice. It did save me. I nodded to myself, realizing there was nothing more to say. I walked a few rows down and further back, then sat on the ground and opened a leather bag. Hey, Marcus, it's been a while. I pulled out 2 glasses and a bottle of scotch, pouring one for me and one for him, raising my glass to his marker. I'm sorry I haven't visited before. I only learned about your passing through a friend. I would have attended the service if we had stayed in touch. The whiskey had a warm burn as it went down. I regret that. I wish we could have been friends. You were there for me during the darkest time in my life, but you were the one who recognized it. Being around you always reminded me of Lynn and what she did. I chuckled softly. Just another thing she complicated in my life. I patted his marker. Thank you, Marcus. You should have been my friend. I'm sorry that didn't happen, but you truly saved my life, and I can never thank you enough for that. I spoke with your son, and I'm glad you found your way back, too. After finishing my drink, I left both glasses on the stone. I stood and opened the bottle, pouring its contents onto his grave, a simple tribute to a great, flawed man I could never thank enough. Back in my car, I called home. Hey, hun, yeah, I'm done here. Do you want to go out tonight? I feel like celebrating. Celebrate what? Pick your reason. I'm going with the wonderful woman I married. Yeah, okay. I love you, Deb. I'd be there soon.